All right, we live. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Pontiac WYAC DM.3 on your dial. Number one for a reason, and the reason is we keeps it real. We glad to be here. We're a little bit late today. I had to do some family matters, but that's just how life goes. But like to welcome everybody that's come, that's came to see the show today. We got the usual suspects, Scoob G, Amy Camille Muhammad, and our special guest, Pastor Keon Payton, senior pastor of New Bethel Missionary Baptist Church, with us today. So it's going to be an explosive show. It's going to be a good show, informational. You know what I mean? I think it's going to be some good topics touched, and we ready to rock and roll. But before we start, Pastor Keon, we always kind of go over the week of how everybody's week kind of been, talk about what's going on, what been happened, probably in the city of Pontiac, some new current events coming up, and then we kind of dive into the show as it be like that. So, ladies first, Miss Camille Muhammad, the real. What's been going on and how your week been?
The weekend was good. I didn't do any. Wait a minute. I always forget the weekend.
I said, okay. I'm
I don't
getting
know. Friday, I don't think I did anything. I do know that on Sunday I had my girlfriends over, and we
Okay.
had a meal catered in by Kay's Eats, which
Okay.
was the bomb. Thanks, and also had a masseuse come to give us some stress relief. So we really enjoyed it. But
yeah.
I just wanted to have some company, so I enticed them to come and visit with me.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. I seen a couple videos. I said, girl, what this girl doing?
Except for the
Um,
fact
Showing
they
off.
cheated on me. She forgot I was a massage therapist. What a friend.
is that what you call it?
What about you, James? What's been going on with you, man?
Man, I tell you what, life has been pleasant and unpleasant, sir. But
Hmm,
today my daughter graduated. She's a flight attendant. I got to watch her
I
I
saw
graduate.
that.
saw
I saw
that.
that.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Very excited
What
about. I'm
airline did she
happy
fly with?
because she has SkyWest.
Okay.
Now she has a career, and guess what? Her dad gets to fly for free. So you know how much I travel, so I'm really excited. So that helped me deal with the
With
stuff
the buddy pass.
with my store. You know what I mean? Some monies has came up missing. You know what I mean? So I've been going through it, but after that today, it
Yeah,
evened everything out. You know what I mean?
that's a good thing. I'm proud of Paige, man. That's a good thing. Seeing her come up from a little one on up. She a grown lady now. But to the guest, Pastor Keon Payton,
Yes, sir.
how has your week been, man? Like, what's been going on good in your neighborhood? And we gonna dive into it. But what's been going on with you?
Oh man, it's so many things good that's been going on. I'm just really excited and thrilled about the things that God is doing in my life. Um, Most of the audience may or may not know that in 2021 I started a national nonprofit organization called the Institute for Trauma and Economic Justice. We got some great things happening in Pontiac that I'll talk about later. We got some great things happening down at Morehouse College at Atlanta. We're doing some great things in South Carolina.
Mm.
So it's been a lot going on, but good, exciting things. And then had an opportunity to relax a little bit on Saturday. Sunday, I had to preach in Flint for one of my partners who I've been in ministry with for probably over the last 30 years. I think Fred Wilkes and I have been friends. He's my Morehouse brother. He pastors in Flint, invited me to come share for his church's 68th anniversary. We had a great time there at the Mount Nebo Baptist Church in Flint,
Hmm.
and left there and went to the Orchard Lake Cardinals, had their football cheerleading culminating event. You may or may not know that my youngest daughter, Grace, who's 6 years old, this was her first year cheering. She was cheering with the Orchard Lake Cardinals. They came in third place, so that was fun and exciting on Sunday. And then, of course, man, what do we say about the
Lions.
Lions?
You
You know,
know, you know.
I was
Oh,
supposed to be in Houston.
get them.
I'm not can't say I'm mad, but I was supposed to be in Houston.
Well,
But I had to
okay.
preach for my boy in Flint, so I had to hold out and not go to the Lions game. But it was a great time at the game on Sunday, watching the game Sunday night, and then Monday, just back to the grind, man. Doing a lot with the work that we're doing with the Institute for Trauma and Economic Justice. Today, in fact, I had to present for the Genesee County Prevention Coalition. They had their ninth annual meeting today in Flint at the convention center up there. I was a keynote speaker talking about trauma. Went exceptionally well, and then it's just been a full day. I left there, came back to Pontiac, hollered at Brother Bill Maxey, who's doing some great work with building affordable housing now. They got a great program for
Mhm.
young people, teaching them about construction. Left there. My daughters had daddy and pizza night at Chico Elementary School. So I was there with my youngest daughter, had to take my oldest daughter some pizza at her gymnastics. And then I had to come home and change clothes and put on
Man,
something comfortable.
I
So I,
mean, dang, if you want to
yeah,
go outdoors, just say
right.
that.
And hey, he did more stuff than a Marine. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Right. He like a living commercial. I do more than most niggas do it. No, I'm just
I
oh,
know.
wow.
keep
Hey, that's
going,
hey,
keep going.
hey, that's a good thing. You got that energy to do that, to be so active. You know what I mean? That's a blessing right there to be able to
yeah,
continuously be active, doing the things that you love to do, be participant in your children's lives and
Oh
in
yeah,
the community lives. That's a blessing within itself that a lot of people don't even think about why they're doing it. You know what I'm saying? So,
oh yeah.
yeah, you got to give big thanks for that. So yeah, I want to dive directly into it. I mean, because you are the pastor of New Bethel Missionary Baptist Church.
Mhm.
I want to I would like to know what kind of got you into thinking of ministry at such of a young age. How did you feel about going into pastoralship and the ministry, and then segueing into the Institute of Trauma because I believe part of your ministry led you there. You know what I'm saying? So
Sure.
how did you? What was your beginnings, your origins, thinking about to get into this realm, or where you are?
So man, it's really interesting how life comes full circle.
Mm-hmm.
I was very young when I started preaching. Most people who remember me as a young boy growing up in Pontiac, I had two realities in Pontiac. On my mother's side, my family moved up from Tylertown, Mississippi, many years ago. My grandfather, who only reads at a third grade level, he had a skill for laying asphalt and really afforded my family on my mother's side to live an upper middle class life on the north side of Pontiac in the Harrington Hills, where I was born and raised. On my father's side of the family, we dealt with a lot of poverty, abstract poverty, over on Prospect Street, 279 Prospect. And my mother had me very young. She was 15, going on 16 when she had me. My grandparents raised me primarily. I was born on my father's high school graduation night.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
the Pontiac Northern class of 1979. He was a star basketball player, and all his basketball buddies and homies were in the Pontiac General Hospital on June 5th, 1979, when I was born on their graduation night. And he went right off to the military. And so I didn't really have that real presence of my father in my life in that way. And like most of us who have lived in Pontiac and have been in families being raised by single parents, just experienced a number of different challenges in the city, and particularly being exposed to what I was exposed to over on Prospect Street. So a lot of folks who remember me as a kid remember me for getting into a lot of mischief. They called me a bad kid. I was pretty much into everything. I mean, we were breaking in people's houses, breaking in cars, stealing cars, selling them to give the folks, the drug dealers. They would take the cars that we would steal and they would take it to the chop shop. I mean, that was my reality growing up as a kid. And it came to a point where my mother just felt like she couldn't do anything with me in school. I was interested in your daughter and being a flight attendant because my mother has been flying with Delta Airlines since 1987. And
oh,
before she took that position as a flight attendant with Delta, she was working for the city of Pontiac. And she just grew frustrated with me getting into a lot of trouble. I remember when I graduated from elementary school and it was time to go to middle school, I wanted to go to Madison Middle School. Because all those many years ago, Pontiac had a bad reputation for educating kids. My mother didn't want me going to Pontiac Middle School. And so, because she got a good job with Delta, she decided to take a lot of her hard earned money and put me in private schools. but because I wanted to stay with my friends from the Harrington Hills and from the East Side, I wanted to be at Pontiac Middle School, so I rebelled. She put me into St. Benedict's private school in Waterford, and I remember being kicked out. They expelled me from St. Benedict's, but she said, "You know what? You're still not going to Pontiac schools. I'm putting you in another private school." So she put me in Oakland Christian in Auburn Hills,
Mm.
and I still rebelled. They put me out of school. She said, "You know what? I'm still putting you in a private school." So she enrolled me down at Holy Name in Birmingham. Got into mischief down there. They kicked me out the school.
Wow.
What
Man,
was you doing? What was you,
I was doing all kind of stuff, bro.
man?
And I realized later in life, having gone through therapy and really reflecting on a lot of my childhood issues and childhood trauma, that I was diagnosed with something called disenfranchised grief.
Mm.
Because one of the things that more recently I've been very public about, I think I want to say probably in 2018, I started being honest about a lot of my childhood trauma. And some of it stemmed back to me being sexually molested as a kid by my mother's brother. And I held on to that secret for many, many years. I actually didn't tell my mother until 2012, and I was like 34 years old, because I
Wow.
wanted my family to have the best memories of her brother and my grandmother's son. But the issues that happened in the house, man, he had some mental illness challenges going on, and I was 5 years old, and for about 5 years, I was being molested as a kid. I didn't even know I was being molested as a kid until fifth grade,
Mm.
when I learned about it in elementary school. And I remember going to my grandmother's house and confronting my uncle, and I said, "Man, God's going to get you for what you did to me." And literally, he died not shortly thereafter. And I lived with disenfranchised grief because I felt like I had somehow cursed this man. And I was holding that in and didn't know how to deal with it. And that's what caused me to have a lot of anger issues as a child. That's what caused me to have a lot of issues that people couldn't explain my behavior apart from just saying I was a bad kid. But it wasn't that I was a bad kid. I was just dealing with things that at the time I didn't know how to grapple with, how to deal with. So fast forward, my mother didn't know what to do with me, so she wanted to put me in a juvenile home. She said, "I'm going to put you down in Children's Village." And I remember my grandmother saying to her, "You can't put him in a juvenile home. Send him down there to Florida to live with his father for a while." And so she sent me down to live with my father in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. And I vividly recall my father, who was in the Air Force. He was stationed at Eglin Air Force Base, and he was sent on a mission one night. And there happened to be a tropical storm that passed through Fort Walton. And here
Mhm.
I was, this 13-year-old kid. The storm was raging, lightning was flashing. Seemed like the house was shaking, and I was scared as hell. And I called out to the Lord. I said, "Lord, if you save me through the night, I'll do whatever you want me to do." And literally, I had a dream that night. It was a two-part dream. In the first part of the dream, I was lying in a casket at Cobb Funeral Home. People were walking around viewing my body. And the second part of the dream, I saw myself standing in the pulpit of New Bethel Missionary Baptist Church preaching. And at 13, it was very clear to me that God was giving me a choice, that I could keep doing the things that I was doing, and it would give me the first reality of that dream. A lot of my friends who I grew up with had different realities that I've had, but I made a choice to do something different. And so I started preaching at age, I accepted my call in 13, did my trial sermon in August of 1993. I was 14 years old, and that's the rest has been history.
Mm.
So when I graduated from high school, and all the white kids were talking about going to college at Bloomfield Hills Losser, I said, "Well, I guess I got to go to college too." And because I was a preacher, I didn't know anything about college. I said I wanted to go where Dr. King went. And so I applied to, wearing it proudly here, Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, the only
Right.
college for African American men, period. So I said that's going to be the school I'm going to apply to, because I want to be a preacher and I want to be in the tradition of Dr. King. And I remember my grandmother getting the letter in the mail from Morehouse saying, "Hey," my grandmother said, "Hey, you got your letter from Morehouse." I was so excited, opened up the letter, and it said, "Dear Mr. Payton, we regret to inform you that you have not been admitted into Morehouse College." Because I had been kicked out of middle school so much, my grades were like C average. I didn't have really the academic acumen to get into Morehouse.
Mhm.
But I remember telling the Lord, I said, "Lord, you called me to preach. You told me I should study to show myself approved." I said, "And the one college I applied to said I couldn't come. I'm putting it back on you." And literally, bro, a few weeks later, I got some tickets to the Pistons game. Me and my boy went to the Pistons game. watched the first half. He was like, yo, let's go to the concessions. I was like, nah, I'm gonna chill, watch the halftime show. And I sat there in that seat watching the halftime show, and a complete stranger was sitting to my immediate left and just started talking to me. Found out I was graduating from high school. So he asked me, oh, okay, you thought about college? I said, yeah, I don't really want to talk about that. He said, well, why you don't want to talk about that? I said, because the one school I applied to said I couldn't come. He said, what school was that? I said, Morehouse College. He paused for a long time, which seemed like forever. And he said, bro, tonight must be your lucky night. My name is Mark Hatcher, and I'm an admissions recruiter for Morehouse College. And can you meet me in Detroit before I go back to Atlanta in the morning? And I said, absolutely. And Mark is now an executive with Amazon, working out at Howard University. They got an Amazon film studio at Howard University. He's there now. But Mark is who opened the door to get me into Morehouse, and the rest has really been history, man. I was pastoring in New Jersey. After I finished Morehouse, I went to Princeton, did my Master of Divinity degree, stayed in New Jersey and pastored a small Presbyterian church. And in 2006, Pastor Johnson, who had been at New Bethel for 50 years, called me and said, son, I think it's time for me to retire. And the Lord put it in my spirit to ask you if you would consider coming home. And because it was a childhood dream, I knew that that's what the Lord wanted me to do. I accepted. I always have to remind myself of where I was in 2006. Not only was I pastoring a Presbyterian church, and it was a great congregation there in Orange, New Jersey, but I also was teaching in elementary school. I taught 2 years. The first year I did kindergarten, the second year I did 5th grade. And I'll never forget, bro, in 2004, I was in my mid to late 20s and making like $130,000 a year. I was living in a bad crib in New Jersey, overlooking New York City. I was living the life. And Pastor Johnson asked me to come back to Pontiac. And it wasn't like I was upset about it. It wasn't a Jonah moment not wanting to come back. I was thrilled to come back, to be able to come back to my hometown, my home city, and to be able to take all the things that I had learned to be able to provide opportunity for other young people who look like me. And so it's been now almost 19 years. It was 2006 when I became pastor. Next year will be 19 years, having been called back to New Bethel. And I tell people all the time, it's been a blessing and a curse. More of a blessing because all things work together for the good to them who love God and are called according to his purpose. And in 2019, I was a frustrated pastor, ready to quit, ready to leave New Bethel, just feeling like we were defeated because of all the issues and challenges that were still plaguing the community. And I felt that church people weren't doing the real work of addressing the systemic issues that were plaguing our communities. And I decided to go back for my doctoral studies. And that's when I stumbled across this thing called adverse childhood experiences, better known as childhood trauma, and the impact that it has on individuals as well as communities. And it has been life transformative. I found my own healing from a lot of the triggers and traumas that I've experienced as a child and even as an adult. I think most people probably remember when I was really, really stressed out in 2020. I was confronting a failing marriage. My wife and I were really just having it out because we didn't really take a lot of time to get to know one another, and it presented a number of different challenges. That was the same year that COVID had hit, and I didn't know how I was going to save the church. Trying to keep the doors open with all that was happening. People didn't have access to basic needs in the community, and so we were trying to do all that we could to make certain that people had food and resources that they needed rather. That was a time when the vaccines were brand new and people were reluctant to taking vaccines, and I had to make difficult choices as to how I would lead and pastor my people through considering the wisdom of taking the vaccine. Man, it was a rough year, bro. You may remember all the deaths that we had in 2020
Right.
COVID.
Yep.
And I was one of the only churches in the city of Pontiac that still allowed funerals to take place because I believed in giving people dignity and respect even at the point of death. And so even though a lot of churches weren't having funerals, New Bethel was the one church in Pontiac that still allowed people to come and have their funeral services and die with dignity and respect to celebrate their lives. But I'll never forget, and I'll end it on this note. It was October 31st, Halloween of 2020. that I did a double funeral. It was a mother who had died from coronavirus, and her son heard about it when he was in the dollar store, and it triggered him. Something happened. He got into a confrontation with another person in the store, and they put out a gun and shot and killed him. And his name was Keon. And that really took a lot out of me on that day to do that funeral, to funeralize his brother whose mother had died, and now he was also laying next to her in the casket. And I had to navigate that situation. And then the following day, November 1st, that Sunday, I opened up my church for the first time since it had been closed for COVID. And it was in that moment, man, that we just had a lot going on, bro. And my stress levels were on 10. You may remember, you do know, Sante, I was leading Ebony and Jet magazine as the national community outreach and engagement director, trying to get Kwame out of prison, trying to help the Black farmers of the South who were about to lose about 1.5 million acres of land. But at the same time, every time I turned on the television, Black men and women were being shot down, gunned down in the street by police officers. And so it really had my stress on 10, and impacted me in ways cognitively that were not the best. I made some very poor decisions that I regret in 2020, but I had to go through it because it had to get me to a point where I could see what still needed to heal inside of me. And I thank God for the doctoral studies that I was engaged in, because that's really what I say today, apart from just my faith, my strong faith in God, and knowing that I could trust him in every situation. But my studies in my doctoral program is really what gave me a forward path to know that I didn't have to succumb to all of the issues and traumas and just mental illness that I was experiencing in 2020. And now that I've lived through that, I'm stronger, I'm better, I'm wiser, and I'm excited about the future. And God is just bringing it all full circle in the work that we're doing, even at New Bethel today. So I
Wow,
know I said a mouthful, but
that's
I'll
cool.
right
I'm glad.
and then we go.
I'm glad you did that. That's one heck of a backstory right there. I mean, leading up to right now. Um, with that being said, a key thing that you said earlier, you said it's been blessing and the curse, but we're more blessing than curse. You know what I'm saying? With your journey up to this point and going further, what would you like to see or accomplish with your upcoming journeys, or whatever you got on your deck right now to be able to make a dent or to change in Pontiac? Or what are some of the things that you see as a congregation or the leader of the church or with the Institute of Trauma and Economic Justice? What are some of the things that you're really trying um, to drive home to make a big difference? Because as you see in the city of Pontiac, we do need a lot of there's a lot of mental health that needs addressed.
For sure.
A lot of people, there's a disconnect with the church in the community. Um, I think we mentioned on here before that we almost got 77 churches here in Pontiac, I believe, or more,
Yeah.
or more. Like, I don't know why we have that many. But if you can address, like, what's the disconnect? How can New Bethel be a part of that reconnect? And what you're doing as far as with the Institute of Trauma and Economic Justice to bring it all in as together, if you understand what I'm saying to you.
I think we got to before we can forge a path forward for a successful and thriving future, we have to be able to reckon with our past with truth. And I think, as we were talking, kind of in the green room earlier, Scoob was just, talking about confronting facts and truth. That I think a lot of times church people, we've grown too accustomed to wearing masks, where we don't often speak truthfully about what is really happening in our churches, in our families, in our personal lives. We really have not done well to just be honest about confronting the things that are happening in our communities. And I think it's cultural to a great extent, because a lot of our families come from that silent generation, where we're taught, you just don't talk about certain things, or the old adage, what goes on in this house stays in this house. And there's so much trauma that has gone on in so many of our families in the city of Pontiac that I think people are crying out for real, authentic, personal, family, and even community healing that I think needs to take place in Pontiac and with our families and individuals. And I don't think that we're going to be able to get to that place because there's a let me take that back. We will get to that place.
Okay.
It's going to take a while for us to get to that place because culturally we just have not been able to do well with reckoning with truth. And so ITEJ is all about speaking to the facts about what's going on in a non-judgmental way. We have to get rid of the things that we often associate to be shameful and cause people to feel guilty. And the one place where people should feel safe, the one place where people should feel not judged, but be met where they are as human beings, is often the one place where people are shamed to death and made to feel condemned for their behaviors and their actions, when a lot of times people just haven't been able to heal from the traumas that they've been dealing with in their lives. So I think that, Dr. Robert Anda is one of the co-founders of the ACE study that was conducted in the 1990s. And he often says, we need to stop, asking what's wrong with people, right? And really start just asking what happened to people, and then give people safe spaces where they can talk about the things that have happened to them. I mentioned my own child sexual abuse, and I can do it now, with no shame, no guilt. I've healed as a result. It was very hurtful to my family when I was able to finally find the courage to even confront my own truth with my family. But I thank God that I did it, because I'm even seeing not only the healing that has taken place in my life, but the healing has been happening in my family's lives. It has enabled me. I've always been a transparent person, at least in my own mind, someone who's tried to be honest, someone who's tried to be transparent and authentic. But a lot of times, because people aren't used to that, we're so used to the mask that people wear, that a lot of people really took advantage of the transparency and honesty that I have shared with my life over the years. Because while I may not have disclosed a lot of those challenges that I had as a child with my family, most other people, like my close friends who've known me, or there have been ministers who've come to me over the years who want to be called to ministry, but felt that they had sexual identity issues and challenges because of their own molestation and child sexual abuse. And I would oftentimes just try to connect and let them know, hey, I know what you're dealing with, what you're going through. But because we have not seen that type of culture where we've seen honesty even in the pulpit in many ways, people have not grown accustomed to being able to handle some of that. And I think, looking back over my ministry when I was doing that, I had people, you may remember, Sante, and all of you may remember when somebody wrote a fake letter saying, "Dear New Bethel, please help. The pastor got me drunk and high and made me have sex with him when I was a minor." That thing went viral all over Facebook. It was like 600 shares when that happened in 2020. And it was young people, some of them who grew up in New Bethel, who knew me, who just flat out lied. People in the community who didn't know who I was, but created a story, which impacted me. It impacted my family. It impacted my church. And in many ways, we're still trying to recover from the lies and the rumors that were told about me, during that very difficult time in 2020. And but when you think about Jesus, all that he went through, the first thing he said when he was going through his crucifixion was, Father, forgive them because they know not what they do. And so we know that hurt people hurt other people, but healed people also heal other people. And I just think that we're at a point now, man, where we need to just be honest about what's going on in our community, in our homes, in our families, in our own personal lives, so that we can heal and disrupt these intergenerational traumas that are affecting all of us in ways that I don't think most people have really been able to fully recognize and identify.
Far as like what you said, like when somebody comes out and says things about you that aren't true to that magnitude, which is, it can hurt your career, it can hurt your personal life, family life, relationship, wife, whatever, spouse. You didn't feel the urge, you didn't feel like, maybe I should really attack this head on. And I know, being a spiritual person, sometimes it's like, let God fight my battles,
Hmm.
and leaning on the word, not to your own understanding. But did you feel the urge to be like, just go all out and just say, hey, you know what? As loud as they're going to be about the allegation, I'm going to be as loud about the lie
Sure.
that's being told. Or you just kind of said, you know,
Well, looking back on 2020 when that happened, um, I was under a lot of stress, man. Like I said, I was trying to save my marriage, trying to raise, be a father, trying to keep my church doors open with the pandemic. In my mind, I had bigger issues to grapple with than chase down lies and rumors. Because at the end of the day, no matter what, people gonna believe what they want to believe. And I'm not new to the game. I've been preaching. I've been in ministry. It's been 30 plus years now.
mm-hmm,
And I know how people can take stories and rumors and lies, and you can't chase that down. Once it's out there, it is what it is. But the people who know you and the people who rock with you, those are the people who know. And at the end of the day, if people really wanted to know issues about me, I've always been the type of person where you can come and talk to me.
mm-hmm,
But most people don't have that level of most people would rather gossip and talk about somebody than to actually engage in a real meaningful conversation to get understanding. People aren't trying to get understanding. People like to gossip. People like to spread rumors. Let me tell you this, man. A couple of weeks
mm-hmm,
ago, Morehouse had his homecoming. And before I went to the homecoming, a friend of mine sent me this message from Facebook that had been shared about this um, big time, I guess, thug or whatever, big time drug dealer that everybody, I guess, knew in Detroit. He was married, but turns out he had been having sex with a transvestite or transgender person since the beginning of the year. And his wife, I guess, woke up one morning and took his phone while he was still asleep and saw the communication that this guy was having with this other person for the all year. And she took a screenshot of all the conversation and then uploaded it on Facebook, and on his Facebook, by the way. So all the people he was connected to, everybody he, was connected to, saw this reality of him that they didn't know. And I mean, you can imagine the gossip and the railing and the jokes and all that kind of stuff. And the person who sent it to me, I said, bro, I said, this is the kind of stuff that causes people to commit suicide, man. I said, while we can judge and say that he shouldn't have did this, he shouldn't have did that, at the end of the day, people are human. And everybody's doing something that they ought not be doing. And I think there's a better way of going about addressing issues when people do things that don't always meet our societal expectations than to gossip and, bring people down. And sure enough, I went to homecoming, came back, and my man told me that he's like, bro, you was right. I said, what? I said, what happened? He said, man, my man's came home, killed his wife, and then killed himself. And I'm beginning to realize, and my own traumas and my own issues, but also just understanding ACEs. People go through things in their lives, and they have things that they just feel that they have to hold it in and not be able to share, and it causes people to have what's called maladaptive behaviors, to the maltreatment that they often experience in their lives. But when we don't have a full understanding of that, and we're just looking at people's behavior, we just rail and we just talk about and we gossip without trying to get real understanding and helping people. And I just think that with all that's going on in our world, at the end of the day, I'm 45 years old. I just want to be around people who love me, who I can love back, who I can, co-regulate and have peace with. Let's build. Let's, instead of trying to tear other people down, let's figure out how we can be uplifting one another, because as a community, we could do so much more if we focused on each other's strengths instead of focusing on each other's deficits. Because at the end of the day, no matter how much somebody want to pretend like they're so perfect and they so holier than thou, everybody got their issues, bro. And I think we just have to come to a place where we recognize and acknowledge the real skill sets that people bring to the table, help people to heal, and obviously hold people accountable when their actions don't always meet our expectations. But help people to understand that there's also hope so that they can heal and overcome the challenges that oftentimes people want to just cancel you because of whatever they don't know, whatever they heard, which may or may not even be true.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm about now. And anything else, I just don't have time to even engage, because what people think about me at the end of the day has absolutely nothing to do with who I am as a person and what I'm able to achieve. In fact, the scripture says that a prophet is not without honor except in his own hometown. There's a whole lot that I get complete no respect for in Pontiac, but I'm a global figure. People know me all over the world, literally, for different things I'm engaged in, and we're literally changing the world. But when you come to Pontiac, it's so hard to get things done because of the petty drama and issues
You just Keon.
in small towns,
When you back at home, you just Keon. But I got a question for you.
Yeah,
Um, Being that you got a lot of education, and just for the listeners, it's not like the ACE. I know you probably think he's saying the A. It's the ACE project. It actually had what is like 17,000 participants, if I'm correct.
that's right.
So with that being said, I would like to ask you how you feel about science, because we have a lot of factual things that come about that we learn. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And yet and still, we still take religion a specific way,
A
but
thousand
with the
percent.
knowledge that we have gained, we tend to look away from what's there, because I feel like for me, I was scared to say I don't want to deal with Christianity no more, just
Yeah,
because it's always a fear of being used. You know what I mean? If you don't want to deal with, like, I know I got friends that's everything, and I don't care. I want them to stay what they are. I don't want to change nobody's mind or opinion on what they do.
sure.
But at the same time, I feel like we see a lot of things and we tend to overlook them. So as a pastor, you know what I'm saying, I know you're doing a lot of great things, and it's crazy that I didn't know these things. And I do realize who you are now. You was actually, grew up around the corner from me and on the east side, and because I stayed on Prospect and I
Really?
stayed on Ekman.
Okay.
So, but nevertheless, how do you feel about science, and how is the church going to be able to make a transition to where you can bring those things together, if that's,
Well, the scripture says, man, my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. We have a choice. Either we can study to show ourselves approved, or we can bury our heads in the sands of ignorance. And science is ever evolving, right? The more we study, the more we learn something, the more we can improve our situation. I'm driving today an electric vehicle. Well, 20 years ago, however long ago when I first got my first car, actually it was 30 years ago, when I had that Pontiac Grand Am that I was driving back in the day. Um, they didn't have the technology that we have today. It took years of development, and think about it. Now we're sitting here having a conversation over Zoom. I can see you, right? Somebody had to study and apply the knowledge that they had to wisdom and then understanding, right? So it's like, how do we pursue knowledge, but then how do we translate knowledge into applied knowledge, which is, wisdom? And then when we have wisdom, wisdom brings us to a point of understanding. And the more we can begin to understand, the more we can improve, our lives and our world. And so when you talk about scripture, there's so much that we don't know about. Well, my theological studies helped me to know how the Bible, came to be. A lot of pastors who are very well educated, a lot of things we learn in seminary, a lot of pastors will be put out of their churches if they come teaching what they really learned in seminary, because
fact,
unfortunately we have an audience of persons who only know what they know because mama told them. That's what they always knew, right? And it becomes cultural. Ignorance can become cultural. And then when you start to try to educate people, oftentimes people resist the knowledge and the education because they feel intimidated by it, when all they have to do is to pursue that same knowledge. So when you think about, even I was talking literally today about this topic in my presentation earlier for Genesee County. There's a story in the text about a man who was filled with legions of demons, right? Jesus crossed the lake and came across this man who was cutting himself in this cemetery. He had all these issues going on, but when he saw Jesus, he bowed down to Jesus' feet and said, "Have mercy on me." And the text says that Jesus cast the demons out into the pigs. Well, a lot of things that were explained to be demonic, when we didn't have technical language to be able to, diagnose schizophrenia,
Yeah,
or mental illnesses, or all the things that we, through science and study, advanced, applied knowledge we have today. They didn't have that then. So a
right.
lot of times they would demonize and they would ostracize and they would marginalize and cast people away because of their own ignorance.
Yeah,
But the
because they
thing
will
about,
burn us right now for this Zoom. We get burned up right now for this Zoom. If
what you
we was
mean?
on there and they seen it. I'm saying if they seen to be this because they would say it's witchcraft. You
Oh,
know
for
what I mean?
sure.
We learn,
For sure.
you know what I mean? So
Well,
Exactly.
well.
So
Let
we
me
have
add.
to dispel
Go
the
ahead.
ignorance, man.
Let me. Well, Amy, I didn't cut you off, or did I? You was about to say anything?
No,
Okay.
I'm just listening.
Well, let me ask this: like, when it comes to, and I feel that a lot of things that are deemed as mental illness are some type of possession or some type of demonic possession. So, just as what the Bible or Jesus or Christ identified it as, if you see something that is, I mean, I think we're born with an innate type of thing inside of us that knows what's kind of on the right and what's on the wrong. And when you see something as Christ saw in that man, yeah, he had a mental issue, but that mental issue is, I believe, that there was a demonic possession. And I feel as we see in today's time, we find a lot of words to make it sound a little bit more palatable outside of just saying, hey, this is a demonic possession. If somebody is schizophrenic or somebody's an habitual liar or still, there's a demon that is controlling that spirit in that person, in my opinion. Or
and I believe the complete opposite of that.
okay, but you so I'm just saying, like, what I mean, like, you don't think there's a demonic possession that makes somebody want to steal, that makes somebody want to habitually lie or become a murderer? You don't feel like you think that's a mental illness, that's not a demon controlling that thought
Yeah.
pattern?
Well, fortunately, I believe in both, but no, as far as what I'm saying, mental health. Me being in the field for years. You know what I mean? I've seen it. You know what I mean? And I know the difference between schizophrenia or if somebody is going through something spiritual.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But if you have to be in that field and see it to know that you have people that is try. They have some people. Most people might start off just they could just be bipolar, and because of other traumas that come along during that time, they have to break up into when people schizophrenic, they're dealing all the different people they have is dealing with different issues. You know what I mean? That they have to deal with. And most of the time people never come out of it. But also at the same time, when you deal with kids that are born what's the proper word? That well kids is born with mental illness or
Birth defects and things like that.
yeah, like Williamson's disease or you know what I'm saying, something like that. You know what I'm saying? A lot of time we look at these kids and we be like, "Oh, poor baby." But these kids is always smiling and happy. So why are you saying, "Oh, poor baby," when these kids is always smiling and happy? It might be something wrong with us.
Right.
Mm.
You know what I mean? We always want to look at stuff the way we want to see shit. You know what I mean? And that's not how things is really supposed to be. You know what I mean? So, as far as I mean, demons and shit. I can't say I ever seen a demon. I've seen some weird shit happen before that threw me. You know what I mean? I honestly have. You know what I mean? But a lot of time when people you see somebody going through some shit, you know what I mean? They technically they are fighting demons, but it's in it. It's right here. The demon they fighting is right here.
You think
Yeah.
the demon that a person is fighting is not A demon. Okay. I get it with that. I hear what you say. You know, I don't agree with you. Yeah, I love you. You know what I'm saying?
You ain't
but,
got to.
but and I feel we'll let Pastor go ahead and give his take on that. What do you feel like? You know, these things that people are battling with are mental, birth things, or or these are demons that are attacking them and having certain behaviors be.
Yeah, so I'm in agreement with my brother. I think there is a combination of both, right?
Okay.
So the scripture says that Satan darkens the minds of the people through ignorance primarily. Ignorance causes fear. Ignorance causes people to um, have a nervous system that sometimes can always be jaded. Trauma also can impact and affect that. And when you have fear, when you have a misperception about what you're dealing with because you're not viewing it through the right spirit, which is the spirit of hopefulness, the spirit of love. You're right. So the scripture says, God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. Well, sometimes, our minds can be so darkened by the things that we've dealt with in our lives. I'm glad the brother put the text in Romans 1, 20, 25, and 6. I'm not going to give a whole sermon about it tonight, 26 and 27.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to think about what is it to have a reprobate mind? What does it mean to come to a place where your mind, everything that Paul talks about, Paul is who wrote Romans, he talks a lot about having the right kind of mindset, right? He talks about thinking on things that are pure, thinking on things that are lovely, thinking on things that are honest, that are true. When you don't focus on those kinds of things, you can have a darkened mind. And when
Mm-hmm.
you have a darkened mind, which is often based in ignorance, it can cause you to relate to people differently. And unfortunately, even though the scripture says, my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge, and we should study to show ourselves approved, some people resist knowledge, right? And if you come to a place where you just don't want to know no better, that's a problem right there in and of itself. And we should ask ourselves, why don't we want to know any better? And oftentimes we don't want to know any better because when we know better and we really understand what that knowledge means, then we also have to take some accountability and responsibility on how we go about life differently and how we start treating people.
Yeah,
And sometimes people can have their brains hardwired in a certain type of a way. Sometimes people just don't want to pivot and make that change. And I think that can inherently be a problem that can have demonic consequences because you're not only regulating your own life correctly, but you're causing disruption in the lives of other people because of your behaviors, because you don't want to operate in love, you don't want to operate in knowledge, and you don't want to operate in the type of a spirit that's going to bring people into healing and reconciliation. And when the scripture starts talking about in that Romans text how folks had unnatural affections toward one another. Well, what causes us not to be intimate with one another, right? And there's a video that I'll send you, Sante. Maybe you can upload it in the chat that
Okay.
folks can watch later. But it talks about what happens when our brains are wired a certain type of a way, and it causes us to live in a manner where we cannot what's called co-regulate with other people or have safety in our own bodies where we can learn how to deal with other people safely. That to me is a demonic mindset, a demonic spirit, but it can be explained in scientific terms. And so I think that we have to just do a better job of being open to unlearning some things that we have learned and that have been pushed down on us in many regard over the years, and relearn some things. And I think that's just challenging for some people.
yeah.
Mm.
I think my biggest problem with um the Bible is like how you just said, you have to study to show thyself approved. So if you just studying one thing, how can you really learn something? That's number one. And secondly, you have stated that God didn't. We weren't born with fear, but I know for a fact that that's not true because of epigenetics, which everybody know about. Right now, when I mention that, people don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But if you
Mm-hmm.
want to look up epigenetics,
Mm-hmm.
there is things that we pass down to our kids through our DNA, and it's in there. It's in there.
A
So if you
thousand
see your
percent.
kid and you sitting there and your kid is doing this and you doing this, and y'all making the same face, you didn't teach them that.
Right.
It doesn't even take science to show you that.
Right.
You know what I mean? That is epigenetics.
Right.
You know what I mean? So therefore, a lot of things we are literally born with those things. So when the scripture says these particular things and we take them for 100% facts,
We have a phone
I
call. Go
feel
ahead. Go ahead.
I feel it holds us back because it's only a few set of people that's really doing it, that's playing by the rules. You know what I mean? By that guide. You know what I mean? Because for black people, we were taught that we were supposed to listen to our master. That's the main thing they preached. That's the only thing they talked about. That was it. You know what I mean? So it wasn't just slavery that set us back 400 years. How long did religion set us back? Because we don't feel that we can't do what is necessary. Sometimes we feel that we have to be holier than thou, as you say, because if just because that white man stole America, you know what I'm saying, don't mean that we can't get this lot over here. No, they don't. Black people don't even want to take advantage of things. Sometimes it's necessary to do specific things. And that's what type of person I am, Pastor. I'm a real necessary person. You know what I mean? And I feel that a lot of things we can't keep. There's nothing wrong with if you're a Christian pastor, it's not wrong with teaching a word, but sometimes if you study and you see it and you know it, like I had a friend of mine that was a pastor, like I told you earlier, one of the greatest men I ever met before in my life. And I don't want to say his name because I don't want, just in case somebody's listening, they say, well, he was my pastor for all these years, but we would sit down and we had these talks, even after he had a stroke, because I wanted him to get his brain back working right. You
Yeah.
know, if you want to recover any way from a stroke, it takes brain exercise. You want to get them to thinking that, you know what I'm saying? And we would talk about the Bible, you know what I'm saying? And I said, I was like, the things that we talk about in the books that you have read well before me, with your understanding is well greater than mine. And I would say he's more highly intelligent than me. And I asked him, I said, Pastor, you have to know that the book, he said, Gay, my last name, Gay. He said, Gay, I already know what you about to say, Jack. He said, but I've been teaching this and I'm just going to go with it. He said, I see the greater good, so be it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So with the greater good all the time, how does it fit? Where will you manipulate it? Will you say, I don't feel it's right? I don't think you, and I personally don't think you the scary type that'll say, you know what? This don't fit. You know what I mean? So I mean, and also, like a lot of people don't know, King James wrote about 560 books. And I'm saying he didn't write the Bible. He had scribes that you know what I mean? But nevertheless, before that, he had 560 books, but nobody knows what his first book was. A lot of people can't tell you what his first book was about. You know what his first book was about?
What?
Sorcery.
What sorcery?
King James' first book was about sorcery.
Well, King James was not the best character. He didn't
No,
write. He's not the author of the Bible. He basically wanted to put his name on it because they were trying to merge the state with religion for the sake of the empire, which is what we're seeing today in our politics, where people are
it's
using
going on right now, all
national
over again.
1,000%. And you know that's those are the, but when people are ignorant of those things, people just don't have any idea. But I want to say something to you about the epigenetics, because you're absolutely right about how um, the intergenerational transmission of trauma is also through our DNA, through historical traumas that our ancestors have dealt with. So you're 1,000% absolutely right on that. I do this presentation called a near presentation, like I'm near you right now, but it's an acronym that stands for neuroscience, epigenetics, ACEs, and building resilience. So when you talk about neuroscience, it talks about how the architecture of the brain is literally changed based on a person's trauma. And then when you look at the epigenetics aspect, not only can you pass down trauma through DNA, but it's also environmental. So when you live in a community where your household is kind of one way, you naturally gravitate to those behaviors that you grew up with based upon your environmental conditioning, right? So that happens a lot. And I think, when I think about, I believe that Jesus Christ is I believe that Jesus is the ultimate example that God gave us to understand how we ought to relate to one another. Because when I think about the Old Testament text, there's often this language about welcoming the stranger, right? Jesus gave us the greatest command: love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. From Genesis to Revelations, there's example after example of the importance of welcoming people who are different. Why do you think it's important to welcome people who are different? Because if you welcome them not in a spirit of fear, you're actually welcoming the opportunity of learning something different from somebody else who sees life a little different than you do. And I know, we go through life and we think that we know it all. Hell, I'm 45. I've been to the best schools, in the world. But there's a whole lot I don't know. In fact, the more that I learn, there's a lot that I don't know. And so I have to have a certain level of humility to appreciate listening to other people, valuing other people's perspectives, because in just doing that, it will hopefully give me a different kind of perspective that I can appreciate, that oftentimes might even fortify the values that I already hold and maintain. And I think that religion has been used very divisively. It has been used very inappropriately. We see it, Trump had these Bibles with his name on it, right? He was signing Bibles, Trump. Right? And you got people who were waving flags talking about Jesus is my savior, or Trump is my president and Jesus is my savior. So we know that these types of things have been going on down through the years. And the Bible has been altered, it has been changed, even though the book of Revelation says you should not take anything or add anything to the Bible. Well, when did that come about? In 325 AD. More than 300 years after Jesus died, these bishops came together, right, and decided what was going to be in these 66 books that we've decided to be our Bible. And then later comes King James, puts his stamp on it. And even in 2024, there are people who've been in church all their lives who won't even read a nuanced, revised version of the Bible because they believe that King James is the only version you ought to receive. So that is the type of ignorance that we have that has been cultural, has been passed down from generation to generation. And I think that we just have to do a better job of educating ourselves and educating our parishioners and being open to know that we don't know all things. And going back to the Old Testament, this Micah 6:8 says, "What doth the Lord require of you? 3 things: do justly, show mercy, and walk humbly." It's self-explanatory. Do right by other people. Be able to treat other people with the same type of mercy that you would want when you found in a situation and don't want to be stoned to death. And then be humble and recognize that you don't know everything. And if we could just do that, I think we would be way better off in actually fulfilling the great command that Jesus left for us.
Damn. Okay. Well, we
have
damn sure can agree on something. Then we can
we have
damn
a call.
sure agree on something.
We have a caller on. Thanks for your patience. Please identify yourself and thanks for joining with Pastor Keon Payton. Who we speaking to? Caller? Hello, caller.
Good evening, panel. Good evening, WYAC. Can you guys hear me?
Oh, yeah, we hear you just fine. Who we speaking to? Turn down your telephone so you're getting that feedback.
Sounds like Tone Rowe.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hold on one second.
Can you hear me? I hear Amy. Amy sound like she might even know my voice.
Yep, we got your voice.
She helped raise me.
What's going on, brother?
Sound like you listening. Do you got 2 devices going?
Yeah, do you?
Yeah, tell him to turn his volume
I'm
down.
in let me turn this
Yeah,
down.
turn
I'm
it all
trying
the
to
way
call
down.
in on my phone and I'm watching y'all
My
on
bad. I
make
gotta
out
go
of that.
ahead. I gotta smoke, man, because I don't want people to say that I treated Keon different then. Because I'm like, you know what? I gotta do the same thing I normally do because I don't want nobody thinking I'm biased. You know what I
Ain't no
mean?
judgment here, good brother.
What you got? What you got
Amen.
for us, Tone?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for taking my call, man. I love all y'all, man. Big shout out to brother Keon, man. We greatly appreciate all of your work here in Pontiac and your efforts here to make the city better. And I just had a couple questions, and I did want to address. I think Brother Scoob said that in the Word it tells us that we weren't born with the spirit of fear, and I could be absolutely wrong. You correct me if I'm not right, Pastor Keon. I think the Word says that God has not given us the spirit of fear. So
Right.
in terms of being born, I believe that from my interpretation of the Word, it says that we are all born into sin, and
Yeah.
so if we're born into sin, then we're born with these things. Such as fear. We're born into sin, but it's God who has not given us the spirit of fear once we have received the Lord Jesus Christ, and not in the spirit of fear that as if a Doberman pinscher was running up on you to bite you or something, that you're not going to be afraid, but our approach to things when we're walking by faith and not by sight, that our approach to those things should not be of fear, because every element that any assignment that God has given us is going to come with an element of danger. For example, when Peter were told to come out into the water and walk, of course, that's going to appear to be something fearful to do when God has called and given you an assignment. So that could appear to be fearful. And so God says, I haven't given you the spirit of fear. And it was actually when he became fearful and began to look at the storm that was happening is when he began to actually sink, and Christ had to save him and pull him up from the water. So I'm correct me if I'm wrong, Pastor, if that's what the word is, if that's how it's interpreted, that God has not given us the spirit of fear.
You right on. Dead on.
Okay. All righty again. And then and real quick, and of course I love you, Brother Keon. I know us as Christians and as believers that we have to love everybody. Again, that should be actually that's the first commandment within the new covenant instead of the Old Testament law. I understand that we are now in a grace dispensation and that we're supposed to love. When they asked Christ, what is the greatest commandment, that his response was that love would be the greatest commandment. And how will they know us as his disciples? He says that it would be by our love,
Sure.
that they would know that we are the disciples of Christ.
Hey,
And
Tone,
so
is you
again,
familiar? Are you familiar with the word allegory?
yeah, I'm gonna answer that after I ask my question, if that's cool.
Oh, go ahead. I thought my bad. Go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, so I just wanted to pose this question toward Pastor Keon. I know I put it in the chat to just give an exegesis, and of course, love also means in this case we know that love, because I have people in my children, for instance, I love them, and so in many cases I will have to correct them, or I would have to, like God says, He chastens those who He loves.
Mm-hmm.
So, in many times when we find ourselves getting a whooping from God, it's only because that He loves us. And I believe that we have to, in many cases, love someone enough to let them know that something might not be in alignment. And in this case, with the scriptures. And so in the scriptures, and out of love, this is just out of love, because of course
Say
the
that one more
Bible
time,
says
Brother
that
Rowe.
God. Yeah, the Bible tells us that God desires not to see not one loss.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the scriptures where it tells us, and I don't consider myself a Bible scholar or anything like that. I don't have a doctorate degree. My bachelor's is in human services. but I love the Lord, and I do try to study to show myself approved. And
Yes.
so here where it tells us, even in Leviticus, of course, Pastor, you already know that there's plenty of scriptures in the book of Leviticus, and I heard what you said, but I don't know if it exegeted the text properly, and so it just says here, for this reason, God gave them over to degrading passions, for there were women exchanged the natural function for that which is unnatural. And in the same way, also, the men abandoned the natural function of the woman and burned in their own desire toward one another. Men with men committing indecent acts and receiving their own persons due to penalty of their error. And so I don't know. And I mean, of course, this is not, I know the Bible wasn't written in English, that the Bible was written in Hebrew and Greek. And then you guys talked about how King James how bishops came together and King James had different translations of the Bible. But in its proper context, can you exegete that text for me, Pastor?
Well, that text has been exegeted in a number of different ways, right? Because it's all, again, it's all about perspective that you bring to the text. One that I will say, even from the author's own words, you know, Paul was on a journey of his own self-discovery. Just because when he was converted, on the road to Damascus, he didn't receive all revelation of truth. In fact, when you study Paul's writings, Paul's perspective about his theological positions were often nuanced, or they often evolved. In fact, there's one text he says it very clearly, that we see through a glass dimly, right? Where we know in part, but one day we'll come to the full knowledge of. So even Paul acknowledged that while he had a perspective on things at one point in his life and ministry, it didn't mean that he had full all well knowledge of truth. And I think it becomes very dangerous when we take when we take writings of any human beings who are on a journey of discovery of God and the revelation of God, to take it um, as absolute.
Right. Why you trying to find yourself? I want to throw that in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, because that's the reality of it. Like, I've been in ministry for 30 years. A lot of my positions and what I have now, while I'm still very conservative in many ways, even though I can be liberal at times, I'm still very theologically conservative. But some of my views are completely different than when I first started preaching 30 years ago.
Right.
Because in my walk with Christ, in my walk with God, my personal relationship informed me of my positions about different things. And it's almost like, the challenge that Jesus had in his day. Here you had God in the flesh, who walked among these people who knew the Bible. We know them. They were called scribes and Pharisees, right?
See.
They knew the text. They studied the text. They memorized the text. They lived as scriptural literalists. And then here comes this boy born in Bethlehem, right? From Nazareth. Nothing good can come out of this. And here he comes bringing nuance to ideas that they have had going back to Moses, who brought them out of Egypt many, many, many moons ago. And so when Jesus started bringing alternative perspectives of truth, it was very challenging for the scribes and Pharisees. We know what ended up happening. They killed him because they didn't like what he had to say about a lot of stuff. And so I just feel that when we talk about being integral to the text, you cannot take one scripture and apply that to all truth. I think you start from the lens of understanding who Jesus was and how Jesus operated and how Jesus treated people and how Jesus gave grace in many regard to people that he interacted with, and the man who he healed on the Sabbath day. Well, theologically, according to the laws of Leviticus that you just brought up, he wasn't supposed to do a lot of what he did. But he did it because he said, you don't know God like I know God, basically. And I know that my daddy is not going to want to have this man sitting here lame if I'm in a position to do something to heal him. And so you might want to lean to your scriptural literalism, but I'm not thinking about that right now because I know who my daddy is and what my daddy ultimately wants for people. And so I'm going to choose what I know out of my personal relationship with God and with Christ. And I think all of us are on the spectrum, right? Because my walk with God is not going to be your walk, Brother Tony. My walk with God is not going to be yours, Sante, or yours, Camille. But hopefully, we are all striving to get to know
There.
the Lord,
Mhm.
right? And we are all on a journey. And the Lord will reveal to us what we need to know in time, but we all are going to ultimately be judged. So when I look at people who want to use that text in Romans 1 to justify whether or not homosexuality is a sin, because that's ultimately what it comes down to. And I've argued this since I was at my days at Morehouse. And I used to be the one quoting these scriptures, gay bashing when I was a student at Morehouse. But I've evolved to come to a place where I also realize what causes unnatural affections, right? I tell people today that I'm bisexual. I never led with that, but I'll tell you that now only because if you were to put me in one of your boxes, I would have to give terminology. So if I like somebody, if my sexual urges are with man and with woman, you're going to judge me from your lens of what the Bible say this, but you don't know my story. You haven't walked in my shoes. You don't know what I've dealt with. You don't know what what brings um I mentioned a video earlier that I did share with Sante. Hopefully he'll drop it in the text so y'all can go watch it later. It talks about what people need to bring people into co-regulation. If I was sexually abused as a woman by my daddy or by my mother's husband or whomever else, and my mama let me watch it, or I'm not watching, my mama let me deal with it, right? CSA, my mama was in the house. She knew daddy was sleeping with me, but she never did nothing about it. How is that going to make me feel about my mama? How is that going to make me feel about my father? Well, for different people, it might be different. But some people will never feel safe in the company of another gender, for example, because of what they experienced in their life. Their brain was literally hardwired to make them feel like they're not safe being in intimate relationships with others. Now, that doesn't mean that that person can't change, but they ain't going to change overnight. And just because you accepted Jesus today and you got baptized does not mean that you're going to just have everything worked out. We are all on a journey. And I think the more we begin to show compassion and understanding and enable people to feel safe with their own choices, because at the end of the day, what you do with your life, Tony, and your personal life, I'm living mine over here, bro. I don't know what you're doing. I ain't got time to be trying to figure it out. And I'm not here to judge you. Your life is between you and your God. And I think we all have to be able to treat one another in that same type of a way until people come to a realization of where God is leading them in their own personal lives and in their own personal stories.
Hmm.
Well, thank you for that, Pastor. Thank you for that, Pastor. That was very, very informative. And also, I know I heard you talk a lot about people's experiences and their traumas and things like that. But the word also tells us in Romans, I believe that's 12:2, where we have to be renewed in the spirit of our mind, and that we also have to have the mind of Christ, and that also Christ can heal us and make us whole, where there's nothing missing, nothing lacking, and nothing broken, that we can become whole, where our traumas and our experiences can't be changed, but God can heal us from those. That way, that inward healing results in an outward display in
1,000%.
how we live out our lives or whatnot. And of course, that's just, and it sounds somewhat just based on what you're saying, that Paul's writings are not necessarily truth, when it also the word tells us that his writings can be considered true in his writings, but just a parallel scripture outside of Paul's writings, because I know lots of people don't adhere to Paul's writings based on what you just said. But even going back into Leviticus and in the Old Testament, 20:13 through 16, it says, if there is a man who lies with the male and those who lie with the woman, both of them have committed a detestable act, they shall surely be put to death. Their blood guiltiness is upon them. If there is a man who marries a woman, and goes on to talk about sexual immorality, but both he and she shall be burned in the fire. So there will be no immorality in your midst if there is a man who lies with an animal. So it goes on to talk about, so there's multiple scriptures, and of course you're the scholar of the Bible. There's multiple scriptures that parallel this, something that I believe if it's redundant within the Bible, then God is placing emphasis on these particular topics or whatnot. And of course, I know everybody have their struggles. None of us is without sin. I believe the word also tells us that we all fall short of his glory, and that we all must have a heart of repentance. All of us fall short of his glory. But I also believe that there's a difference. Now, correct me again if I'm wrong, that there's a difference between one who falls short, repents, and turns, as opposed to someone who has a lifestyle of sin without repentance.
Well, I know that's the conventional way. Like I said, bro, I didn't start preaching yesterday. That is
Mm-hmm.
the dominant, pervasive viewpoint. I've just come to a place where I don't share that view anymore, and I'm happy. And I know, I'm all about full disclosure. It's no secret to me when I saw your name put that question in the chat. You were one of the ones who made a comment on my own personal Facebook page when I did marry a couple in Pontiac. I know you were very upset about it, and so I understand
No,
your.
I wasn't upset, Pastor. I love you, man. I'm not upset. Let me
I'm
just
not
make
upset,
that
but you
clear,
you were
man.
one
I'm not
who
upset or
was vocal
anything like
about it.
that.
You were vocal about it.
No, I just, yeah, I was vocal, but just because I believe if someone is bold enough to express their belief of the Bible, then someone also has to be stand on the business for Christ as well, and then also be bold enough to say, well, look, this, I know everyone else congratulated, and of course, and my and it's not my opinion, is what the word says, but my question was actually directed towards the pastor, because I understand that in the world, or whomever it might be, people are going to do whatever they want to do. But the word also, and as I was getting revelation, praying, the Lord was showing me that the great falling away. We understand that now. First, let me just, I guess, and you can let me know if you believe the Bible, or is the Bible something that you still, to this point, that you adhere to the Bible from Genesis to Revelations, or because if not, then really nothing I'm going to say is going to matter anyway. Is the Bible something that you still adhere to from Genesis to Revelation, now that you feel that you're in a different place as it relates to the Word of God?
Well, I believe there are a lot of sacred texts. I believe that the same God who is in Paul is the same God who's in me. I have been, you know, I can't, all I can do is express to you my view based on my walk with Christ. And, we can argue the text all day, all night, bro, and for weeks. There are denominations that have different views about, they're Baptist, Kojic, Apostolic, Methodist. How many denominations are there? There people
But think
disagree.
about it. There's some things that we gonna stick to, that even within denominations, that make you a Christian. Whether there's the Holy Trinity, whether there's the Father, the Son, Holy Spirit. There's some things that all denominations, as being a Christian, that we gonna hold true and agree in. There's gonna be
That's not
more
true.
things
That's
that
not
we
true. So
agree in than we not agree in.
there are a number of denominations that are actually, way before I even began to affirm same-sex marriage, and be an advocate for those who wanted to choose that. Most of you know there are a number of denominations that actually led and championed this before I even came to my understanding of it. I had your view many years while going through seminary, while there were actual conversations being had within denominations that changed their positions based on this. And I was like you. I had to wrestle with it. I had to grapple with it. My dissertation, I'm going to be writing a book on it. It's not something that I'm going to be able to convince you tonight, and I'm even trying to convince you tonight, but I can tell you that I've done my work, and I have peace with the decision that I made and why I made the decision. And I think we're going to have to rest it at that, because going back, like I said, we can go back and forth all night. I can tell you about eunuchs in the scripture. Some were made to be eunuchs. Some chose to be eunuchs. And the Bible says some were born that way. There are hermaphrodites in the world, people that were born with both sex organs. What, if we're talking about theological, if God makes no mistakes, if God does things one way, then how are people born with as hermaphrodites? And what do we do with those people? Do we not love them? Do we not respect them? Do we not treat them with human dignity and the love of
We
Christ?
love
I mean,
everyone.
I could talk about this all night, because like I said, I'm not new to the conversation, but I don't want to get into a situation where you and I are just kind of going back and forth. I'm happy to have Sante give you my information afterwards, so you can reach out to me on Facebook. And when I have time, we can go to coffee, we can do lunch. I love theological discourse, but I also don't want to monopolize this conversation here tonight just around same-sex
Yeah,
gender issues.
Brother Tony, man, thanks for
I understand.
thanks for calling, bro. Appreciate your comment and your input as always, man. I'm
And
be-
call me, bro. Please call me. Let's
and
go
I'll
get
Yeah,
into it.
exchange
yeah,
that.
yeah. I'm having Sante pass me your information, and that way we'll chop it up
I'm happy to do it,
offline.
brother. Happy to do it.
All
Thank,
right, love you, man. Let's make that
Wait
perfectly
though,
clear, man.
before you
Love
go.
you, bro.
Oh man, I love you back,
Yes,
bro. But
sir.
if you wanna do
All right.
if you want to prepare for a conversation with me, my dissertation is available to the public. So if you Google my name and dissertation, it should pull up where you can get full access to my writings. I talk about a lot of these theological things. I talk about the nature of sexuality in my dissertation. So I fully explore a lot of these concepts that you're talking about here now. I uplift a lot of the challenging scriptures that you've been bringing up here today. It's in my dissertation. So check it out. And like I said,
Okay.
when you want to have the conversation, I'm here for it. I appreciate you though
Will
raising the
do.
issue here
Will
tonight.
do.
thanks,
Yeah.
brother Tony.
Thanks for all the great work, man, and being a pillar of the community, brother.
Bless you, brother. Pray for me,
God
man.
bless.
It ain't easy.
Yes, sir. All right. Yes.
So, hey, real quick on Tone's thing when he was talking about when the Jesus and walking on water, and I what I wanted him to answer, like I can't get Tone to answer the hard questions. Was he was he was he familiar with the word allegory?
Hmm.
Because I believe it was written in allegory, and I believe
We're gonna have to have him back so he can answer that because yeah,
right.
that
So check it out. So nevertheless, even if I look at shit in a completely different way, it might not be a religious way, but if we look at what's actually really there, we can still agree. So if you don't have the confidence to do what you need to do, walk on water, how can you survive? You know what I mean? So basically, if that's how I take it, is if when the Bible states that, and I don't believe it the same way, but I can believe in the message,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Then it still works. So
absolutely.
the thing is yes, it takes positivity. It takes you to believe in what you're doing to make it work, or it's not gonna fucking work. And we know right from wrong. So it seemed like you were stealing some of my. You don't see me talking somewhere before, and you don't. But no, I'm just talking junk, man. But I said the same thing about the hermaphrodites before. All of that. If it, you know what I'm saying, if God don't make mistakes, then they can't be a mistake. So how does that justify this, or how can you compare the two? You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, all we got to do is treat people how the fuck we want to be treated.
That's
That's
it.
law. That's
Man,
religion.
don't
That's
worry
it.
about nothing else.
That's it.
I
And
can't
in
do that. So I'll tell you how
bro,
I be running.
uh, I have a couple a couple today where they've been in a same sex relationship for many years, but the person was able to find healing with that partner, and now they're actually deciding that they want to go back to a heterosexual relationship. People can change, and he's right. God can heal if people want to have. The scripture says God will give you the desires of your heart, and I believe that. But it's like if you get sick today, do I believe that God can do a miracle and heal your body today? I've seen that, but I've also seen where people have been sick for a long time and they need medication. And the medication is what also enables them to regulate their lives where they can still thrive. But that medication is also something that is there for a support. But I've also seen people with this very same condition who are miraculously healed by it. So is taking medications wrong? Some people actually believe that. They wait on God. I'm not going to take no medication because I'm going to wait on God to heal me. So, I mean, there are ways that we can take conversations, but I think it comes back to what you just said, brother. Just treat people how you want to be treated at the end of the day. Love on people, show respect to people. Because if you say you are a follower of Jesus Christ, that's what he did. And he was criticized and judged for doing that from the very people who ought to have been doing it in the first place. And that's people who say that they represent God.
Right.
Right.
I know we winding into your time. We getting close to the
Well, y'all get me
time.
fired up. Go.
Because and James talking about we need to round it up. No, we go. But at the end of the day, so let me ask you this. I mean, how has your of course you brought it up as far as the marriage that you or the union that you helped put together a couple of weeks ago or a
Yeah.
couple of weeks, yeah. So I mean, was there a lot of yeah, it was some kickback from you, but I mean, I think you're used to that by now. I think you're used to some pushback from how things go. When according to the things that you do, that it's not about how other people feel about it. It's about if you feel right about what you're doing. So let me ask you this: as far as in the community, because again, there's a lot of churches and there's a lot of pastors and elders and things like that. How was the relationship of what you did? I know, not saying any names and not trying to stir up the pot or anything, but has there been any like kickback that's alienating you from the rest of the fellowship with pastors out here
Oh,
because of that?
1,000%. 1,000%.
Oh, wow.
Um, First of all, I'm not going to talk bad about the pastors in Pontiac. They need some work, and I've already told them that they need some work. But at the end of the day, bro, you see, the advantage of being in ministry as long as I have, in the capacity of ministry that I've been serving, I know a whole lot about what really goes on in the pulpit and in these pews. And what I will say is that if people really knew what was going on with their pastor at the end of the day, it's a whole lot of folks who wouldn't be going to some of these churches that they're going to when they have views
Oh,
that they differ
shit.
from. And so at the end of the day, it goes back to treat people how you want to be treated, because I don't tell nobody's business unless you really put me in a situation where I have to just put you in check for real, because I will do that. At the end of the day, there's a lot going on that has been going on for a very long time, and it continues to go on because we're not honest about what has been going on. When I
What's
did
been
my,
going on?
what do I mean?
Yeah, what's been going on, Pastor?
I mean,
Fill
well,
me in.
think about the number of pastors that have stepped outside of their marriages and have gotten people pregnant in their congregations
In Pontiac?
and have disowned those kids or sent those kids to live south because they didn't want the people to know about the fact that they got the secretary pregnant or Sister Susie pregnant or whomever pregnant.
Say
Uh,
that again, Pastor.
this didn't just start in 2024. This has been going on for a very, very, very long time, because at the end of the day, while a lot of people want to put their pastors on pedestals, pastors are human beings. And the
Fact.
same thing that every human being deals with and grapples with in their own personal lives and family lives and everything else, pastors have to deal with that as well. And so, if we really want to be truthful and honest about what is really going on for real, I think a lot of people will be shocked. Those who are being shocked by this whole P. Diddy thing, I think, that's beginning to reveal a lot of what's been going on in different places and things, et cetera. Well,
I'm
the
one of
church
the
is no
people that's not
different.
shocked, so I don't.
The church is no different. And
Yeah,
that's why even though in Pontiac some of the pastors can act a little shady and a little crazy, even though I won't go too much into that, I'll just leave that
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
I feel a certain kind of way about it because I know that when I started preaching in ministry, these were brothers who I loved and respected. And I told many of them that. And it was very unfortunate that, I have not changed as a person. The only thing that's changed about me is I've just been honest about things that have been transpiring because I got to a place where I wasn't going to allow people who had privileged information to continue to exploit that and take my power. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm walking in my power and I own my truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also very intimidating for a lot of people because they feel like they can't do it. It's when I did my dissertation, and I strongly encourage anyone who want to take a look at it to get it. I will be writing a book very soon,
Mm-hmm.
next year. Hopefully, my book will be coming out. But I had 4 people in my church that were human subjects for my research. They will remain anonymous, but they range from the ages of 30 to 72, male and female. All of these persons had significant adverse childhood experiences or childhood trauma. They were randomly selected. All of them were victims of child sexual abuse. They all struggled with substance use disorder. Some of them were hospitalized on many occasions for their substance use disorders. Many of them struggled with sexual identity. Most of them are not out. And the 72-year-old told me that they will never disclose what happened to them because they're 72 years old. But when the Lord should call them home, then that might be an opportunity where I can even be truthful about them to
Mm,
break the silence around what people have been dealing with and have been going through for a number of years. When I started my research,
that's some
Camille,
sad shit.
yeah, when I started my research, it was when Marvin Gaye, I did a sermon series in my church in 2019 called What's Going On. Well, anybody who knows about Marvin Gaye knows that he was a son of the church. His father was a pastor. And I often say that Marvin was much more prophetic than his own father, who preached in the pulpit every Sunday. The man ultimately who ended up killing his own son. But when you think about the things that people have dealt with, there are no secrets to some of the pastors who, back in the day, had women and men. The FBI kept records of pastors that they were going to exploit. Uh,
Yeah,
these are major pastors who were living DL lives, but they couldn't walk in their truth because of the perception about what a pastor is supposed to be and people putting pastors on pedestals. There are a lot of people right now committing suicide. There's a young pastor recently committed suicide, struggling with sexual identity, and not being able to grapple with that. And I think that's just one of the reasons why I'm very passionate about this issue right now, because I know what I dealt with in 2020
Mm-hmm.
when people tried to demonize me after I done buried their family members, I done married them, I done bent over backwards to help people keep them in their houses, help keep their
hmm
children out of prison, visiting them when they were incarcerated. The things that we have done over the years to benefit people, and then people find out that I've been sexually abused, and as a result, been struggling with my sexuality, trying to cope with that for many years, and to then do a complete turn and shun me. I know what it's like to feel like that. And nobody should have to feel like that. Nobody should have to go through that, particularly when we say that we represent Jesus Christ, who provides opportunity for all to come and find safety and healing, walking and living in their truths. And so that's the ministry that New Bethel Missionary Baptist Church is about. We're not no fake, phony church. We're about what's real. We're trying to get people healed. We're trying to talk about the things that we historically have not been able to talk about so that we can air those things out and get on the path for healing and thriving. And so, for people who are looking for truth and honesty and transparency, but also to do what we need to do to get closer to God, that's the platform that New Bethel today is trying to achieve. I know deacons who slept with people in the choir, got them pregnant, and then they can't sing in the choir no more, but the deacon can still be up performing his duties on Sunday, right? And he the one that got the one pregnant in the choir stand who can't sing no more. The hypocrisy that we have allowed and enabled in many of our churches, it needs to stop so that we can get people.
Do
And
you think it's too far gone?
it's
I mean, do you think we're to a point now where it's so much of a falling away where it's like even like I said with the amount of churches that we have in just Pontiac alone, but most urban communities, you know what I mean? It's a lot. Detroit, Flint, Saginaw, other places, different states. There's just a plethora of many churches in the black community, and it just doesn't seem to be resonating with the people as it used to, because as you know, as we growing up, all of us growing up, the church was really the foundation, the backbone of our community. That's where you go to as a community. Even if we all didn't kind of believe halfway the same, we knew that was the place of safe, refuge. I mean, we can get help and bring help. But now it's like to the point. It's
but
not
bring help for what, Sante?
bring help for every issue. Supposedly every issue that we had, we confront ourselves as a human being, or if it was food, if it was abuse, if it was housing, if it was a political a fight, you know what I mean? Anything, the church was there for that. But it just doesn't seem like now, as we see, young people don't participate as they used to. Most men, as we see, most churches are really kind of supported by women. You don't see a lot of men in churches anymore.
Right.
And it's almost to the point where like it's just not one church. It's any church you go to on a Sunday, you're going to see like 90% women. You're not going to see men anyway. So what is it that the church has to do to get people back into it or being the backbone of the community? And then a follow up with that, if you can answer, where the coalition of pastors in this city may be splintered. I don't know how much, I'm not into the know, but how can we move forward in a type of city like we are in Pontiac without a cohesive coalition of, these are elders, these are people that people are going to every Sunday. If we don't have a united front to move forward as believers or whatnot, or it could be in different, denominations or whatever the case, but as a unit to make Pontiac better, or what can we do? Because it just seemed like it's so far gone at this point.
Well, we have to decide whether or not we're going to walk in truth. I think that's just what it boils down to. Are we going to be honest about what we all know what's been going on? A lot of men stopped coming to church because the pastors was sleeping with a lot of the men's with their wives. Or the wife would be going, giving the pastor more respect than she give her husband at home.
Yeah, I think that's more what it really is. I think that's really it. Because I always said I would never, you know what I'm saying, even I told my daughter, I said, if you ever did start going to church, don't bring no word home that your pastor told you and tell your husband. You know what I mean? Don't do that. But that happened. I've seen it happen my whole life through 4 generations I've seen. You know what I mean? At a time. Because at a time I had a great grandma. Great, you know what I mean? So I got to see it. And I got to see it. And I think my grandma was sleeping with I ain't gonna say his name. He was
Yeah.
cooking, bringing in meals. I'll be over there at the church with her all the time. But my great granddaddy had three females that she would go drop them off a place. So shit, I don't know,
When
but
I
you know
first
what I
became
mean.
the pastor of New Bethel in 2006, I had a minister to tell me that the responsibility of the deacons was to take care of the widows.
Hmm.
And he wasn't talking about,
Bringing them plates.
you understand?
Wow.
So I mean, this is something, bro, that, and it's not just in the black church, right?
Right, right.
Look at the Catholic Church,
Ugh.
and how it has been ravaged by child sexual abuse that's been going on, and it's been covered up and been hidden. Well, it's in a lot of our churches where this has just been the reality. And a lot of times what happens is you're dealing with people who have a diminished view of self-worth. And when you don't feel worthy, you find yourself putting yourself in positions that that are not always healthy. And we have seen this. And I just feel that the only way we're going to get to a place of true healing and repentance is by being honest about our traumatic past.
But I noticed, like, when, especially like with celebrity mega church pastors and stuff like that, when allegations start to come forth, the church starts to attack. Like, you can't talk about a man of God in this way. They like, even the parishioners become very, very defensive.
Mhm.
And, or, I mean, even in this podcast and talking to you, you mentioned things are happening, but I don't feel like people are like honestly being called out on their shit. Like, you can know things are happening, but when it comes down to who and what, it's almost like, but I ain't gonna say no names, or I ain't gonna say
Against
which
the
church.
law. So
Huh?
it's against the hood law.
Yeah, so they're allowed to keep, doing what they're doing.
Hmm.
Well, I agree to a certain extent. I don't believe in taking the person who's found in the very act of adultery and bringing them before the community to stone them to death. And a lot of times that is the spirit that a lot of people want. That's the spirit they had on me when they were trying to call Ebony and get me fired. People who made up stuff and were on a witch hunt, and I was the witch that they was trying to take down. There's a way to have conversations with people into bringing about accountability. And I think that, you know, we as a community um, are just going to have to get back to that place, Camille, where put yourself in the shoes of that pastor, or put yourself in the shoes of whomever, and the scripture says if your brother or your sister offend you, go to your brother, right? And have that conversation. If they don't want to hear you, Matthew chapter 8 says, go get a witness and then come to that person with the witness and then say, this is a situation. How are we going to address this? Because a lot of times it's giving people the opportunity to acknowledge what is wrong so that they can then get back on the path. Because a lot of times when people are doing things that are wrong, and it becomes very egregious, is because it has been a culture of silence that has enabled it for too long. When we notice something happens that's wrong and you go through the right process of addressing it, I think there is a way that's proper and a way that can be proactive and constructive, that doesn't have to be destructive. Because also you have to acknowledge that the church is a place where uh, we have to protect each other's reputation. The Bible says that, right? We all gonna fall. We all gonna make mistakes. But if you make somebody feel like because of their mistake that God can no longer use them or whatever the case may be, that is not a constructive way of addressing the situation. When David was caught in, doing what he did and sleeping with Bathsheba and had the woman's husband killed, Nathan was very um, meticulous in how he went about addressing that situation. And he was able to speak the truth in love to David, who was clearly blinded by his own crazy actions. But when the accountability was brought, it was not in a way that, oh, we about to, you ain't gonna be king no more. We about to just, no, it was, bro. You say you're a man of God and you're doing these kinds of things. What do you think God has to say about this? And a person who really has God in them, when they're brought into the mirror of seeing themselves, if they have any God in them and they're spoken to with truth in love, then a God-filled man or woman is going to say, you know what? I don't know what something came over me. Psalm 51, Lord, create in me a clean heart and renew a right spirit within me. And if we're honest, we all have been at a place in our lives where we might have been in that pig pen wallowing in the mud.
Right.
But we can come back home. But it's going to start with love and knowing that you're not going to be condemned and outcast because you made a series of misjudgments. And if we can begin to be grown men and women and having grown men and women conversations and not a lot of this messy, stuff that we all know that we have to deal with, unfortunately, too often, particularly in Pontiac, then that's how we can start, I feel, cleaning up a lot of this mess that has been going on in our homes and in our churches and in the community.
Well, let me go. That's a
Man,
great
I
sec.
see why they don't like your ass, boy. I don't figure it didn't take long. You are careful talking. I said okay. I get it now. It make a hell of a lot more sense now. I get it. I get it. Yeah,
What
you
you get?
two. Yeah, you two are far ahead. Like you too far ahead. You intimidating.
That's what people say, but
You
I'm not.
intimidating.
Like I feel
How
personally,
the hell you think you not you all that education you got sitting over there, man? You well spoken, you articulate, and you man, cut that shit out. You better take that shit with a grain of salt and don't let them sway you because if you believe in the Jesus, then you shouldn't even be worried about them no more because
well,
you got it.
bro.
You
Hey,
got
life
something
is.
way
How do we
different.
start this conversation?
Yeah, you got
Life,
something way different going
life
on.
is wonderful. God is blessing. And if I had 10,000 tongues, I wouldn't be able to take enough about the things that God has done, is doing, and I'm trusting him to do in my life because I know who my daddy is. God has been good to me, bro. In spite of me, God has been good to me. And I say that with all humility
Mm-hmm.
because it really, I am not deserving of the favor that I know is on my life and the grace that God has given me down through the years. So I appreciate you saying that, but I don't try to be intimidating. I don't try, to come across that way, but I'm not no dummy.
Yeah.
I'm never led to be one. I don't aspire to be one, and I make no apologies for it. And so if that intimidates other
Mhm.
people who have their own insecurities, then it's their issues and not mine.
Yeah. You can't be smarter than these. I mean, people out here. You can't be. They don't like that.
I
They
was
don't
about to.
like that.
I was about to ask, like, okay, I mean, actually, when you brought up the community, so I was segueing real quickly about the political aspect because there is a component with the spirituality or the religious or the that part going into the political part because you have had some dealings with the political part, like Pastor Keon was part of helping the initiative to get Kwame Kilpatrick out of prison and his commuted sentence. And I seen a part of that, what he was a part of. And, so he's dealing with, governmental type of issues, not just citywide, but that's on the federal level. You know what I'm saying? Could you speak a little bit about that and your place, your endeavors, with the city of Pontiac, initially, here, because that's where we are. But, on a federal level, like your reach and what you're trying to accomplish with that.
Well, man, in 2018, I ran for state representative because I saw the handwriting on the wall that politics was going to hell. These politicians don't care nothing about the people, nothing about the people. and they become so good at lying and showing up at every event, kissing folks' ass, making them feel good about themselves. And that's why they vote for them for real. Not because they know anything, not because they really care about the community and actually have plans for uplifting the community. But if you come to my event, if you rock with me, I'm gonna rock with you, and we vote for who we like. And unfortunately, that's why we are in many respects in the positions that we're in today. And not only that, but Scoop, you said it a minute ago, bro. There's a lot of ignorance, bro. Like, people told me when I ran that pastors shouldn't be in politics. I had members. They not members now, but I had people in my church and in the community who literally said that I should not be running for office because I was a pastor. But now, my Morehouse brother, Raphael Warnock, is in the U.S. Senate. And when he was running, they were all some of them going to Georgia to help get him elected. But when I ran for office, the pastor wasn't supposed to run. And now, I'm glad I was able to open the door for Pastor William Parker, who's now sitting on city council, and Kathy Lee James, who's a woman, by the way, because Deidre would never have gotten elected had I not gone to bat for her with those pastors who didn't even believe in women in leadership back in the day. And there are people who I have gone to bat for in politics that have completely stabbed me in the back. They will lie to my face, and because they know that I'm such a controversial figure in the city, that a lot of people don't really rock with me because of my ideals today. I'm maybe too intimidating. They've lost a sense of, they ain't lost no respect, but they lost a sense of having to acquiesce to the things that I demand, because they know I don't have a following to support putting them out of office. But back in the day when you had to put down chairs in New Bethel, everybody wanted to be a member of New Bethel, bro. But they wanted to leverage New Bethel for their own political aspirations. And I'm the kind of person where I'll rock with you, be honest, be transparent, don't lie to me. And don't put your own ambition above the people, because when you're called to elected office, you're supposed to be representing the interests of the people. But a lot of times, particularly in Pontiac, where you have a lot of insecure people, they run for office and they find a sense of security or value or worth in that title, when they don't even have the wherewithal to have the capacity to govern in an elected office. And we have seen that time and time and time and time again. So I don't even want to deal in politics in that way anymore. So now what I'm doing is I leverage my influence to consult. I'm just going. There are politicians who call me for consulting purposes. I used to work for the most powerful lobby organization in the country as a regional executive. So my political acumen is above the fray, and people who really are movers and shakers, they come to have conversations when it's time to start talking about political strategy.
Wow.
I think I'm about to be a lobbyist, man. I'm for real, man.
Pastor Key, you know what I believe? I think, and then we talked about this before, I think, but we haven't gotten together on it just because of times. But I think, maybe on, you need your own platform, where you coming out like maybe this, or, you have your own people come would be your guests. You talk about these issues and things like that, or maybe on a weekly, bi-weekly, as you can basis, just to let people know what, the overall, let me bring Camille back in, she's back. Your overall ideals, your stance, because not that you have to prove or talk to anybody about where you stand at and where your heart lies, but I believe that in today's world, you know what I mean, especially in your public figure, you do a lot abroad, not just here. You know what I mean? I think it'd be a good thing for you to have your a platform for yourself. And I know you thought about it and talked about it before. It just hasn't came into fruition yet. So let me ask you this: is that something that works for you right now, or are you thinking about that?
Man, I'm chilling, not having to deal with people, bro. I have a loving congregation. Those who rock with me at New Bethel Missionary Baptist Church, we're doing some transformative things. I'm traveling the world. I'm doing a lot of things in other communities, bringing things into fruition. I'm just enjoying. I'm enjoying this space that I've not enjoyed in a very long time.
That's good.
And so, I don't even, at some point I will end up getting a podcast or, something where I'll be a lot more vocal about different issues, et cetera. Particularly now with this Trump presidency, I think there's a lot of education that needs to happen for our people and for the community. And so Project 2025 is imminent. People aren't paying attention to who Trump is appointing in office, and the pain is about to be brought for sure. And so I think people will start coming back to church because they're gonna need to. SNAP benefits, all these other benefits are drying up, and people not
That's
gonna be able to
crazy.
be dependent on the government no more. And I think that's also one of the reasons why people stopped coming to church, because they get comfortable living off the government. The government became the subsidy that the church once used to be, and now that rug is about to be pulled up under the most vulnerable in our communities, and it's very sad and disheartening. But I feel we're in this place where God does all things well, and sometimes we've seen it in the Bible. Sometimes He allows leaders to rise just to bring the people back to Him. And I really feel that, unfortunately, while some of us are going to thrive, some of us, many of us, are going to really be finding ourselves in a very tumultuous period over these next 4 years. And not just that, but with the appointments of the Supreme Court justices, and just today, the Democrats are trying to scramble to get some of Biden's appointees through the Senate while they still have a majority. But it's going to be very, very, very difficult and challenging for our people. And I think that in God's own timing, I'm waiting to get my book done first, and then once I get that first book published, I think I'll have a lot more time on my hands to think about establishing some time to do this. But for you, man, I applaud you. I appreciate you for what you're doing for the community and in providing this space and bringing on different people. Katie Sanders is doing a great job. He has been.
Yeah,
I committed
yeah.
him some years ago for the work that he's doing. And there are people who are finding, and are doing well in this space. And right now, I'm just enjoying the ride that God has me on. And when that time comes, I will ultimately end up doing a podcast.
Hey,
Hey,
listen.
Thank
Hey,
you.
it's Sante fault that this shit going on, Pat.
I'm in the minority on this end anyway. Far as with the vote, everybody's I'm the black Republican on the panel.
Oh, you're
And,
a
I
Republican.
don't, and I'm not Democrat nor Republican. I think part of our problem as a people is we have been.
You hadn't said you were a Republican the whole time
Well, I mean,
politics.
I can't even. I don't. I say I'm probably a moderate, but it's just
That's what I raised.
but I would probably
He's
be
a mag. He's a MAGA though. He a MAGA.
I'll probably be looked at. But a lot of people that on this panel right here, I'm the odd man out. But obviously, I'm just going to say it like, obviously, as far as the nation, I'm probably not the odd man out because he won the popular vote. But I'm looking at the whole political process different from most people that look like me, and that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, and that's why I say, Pastor Keon, like on here, everybody is entitled to how they feel about what they feel about. You know what I mean? It's really how you feel about it, and how you want to live and look at things. That's how you look at it and live. And don't mean that we still can't connect and have
Sure.
some similar type of things, and we can still work together. You know what I mean? So, but some people look at it like, oh, he voted for Trump or she voted for Kamala or whatever. Oh, we can't stand each other. We can't work together.
Right.
People need to get past themselves with that.
1,000%.
People even talking about they gonna leave and ain't left yet. Talking about because he won and they was gonna go leave. Ain't left. Ain't got a passport to leave.
I would have sliced
So,
your tires a couple times, but you stay too far away, bro.
but
That's
how do you feel about those that voted for Trump? That's a good question.
Yeah,
D.
that's the question in there by our brother Derek Wins. Hey, what's up, good brother? Thanks for watching and for the question. Um,
I'm so
I
confused.
don't have any judgment for people who voted for Trump. Sante, you remember when I was leading Ebony and Jet and we were doing the town hall to address Trump. I actually commended him for a lot of positive things that I felt his administration did. I think that you can still we have to come to a place where we can appreciate the good that people do, but also hold people accountable for the things that often are not in the best interest of all the people and are for some of the people. And I think that we need to just better educate ourselves. I think the Democratic Party made a terrible mistake by only making this about abortion and LGBTQI plus issues. When we all know that the price of groceries are going up, the economy is in the shape that it's in. Back in 2020, I bought Dogecoin, and I bought some more today because with Elon Musk, being there, the cryptocurrency, we see where Detroit has just become the first city, to begin to accept crypto. That's the future. So Trump will bring some good things. There will be some resources that will be brought, but there will also be some very needed um, um, governmental support that is still needed for a significant number of people who have been marginalized and disenfranchised by systemic racism and injustices that have kept people in certain positions over the years. And so I felt that Kamala was the best choice for that. My role right now with the being founder and CEO for the Institute of Trauma and Economic Justice, I have a video that I'll also send you, Sante, where it's about a 3.5 minute video where Kamala is very articulate about ACEs and what we need to address ACEs in our communities. I'm aligned with that. I know that she would have advanced policies for that. Not so much with the Trump administration. He did let out Kwame. There are some friends that I have that are Republicans and who worked in the Trump administration. So I know that I'll have an ear to the White House to some extent for people who he will be appointing and working in different capacities. So I still look forward to hopefully being able to leverage whatever influence that I have in trying to be an ear of reason. But I also know that the Republicans are going to be going hard in clamping down on things that are just not going to be advantageous, particularly for African Americans and immigrants.
They done already started.
Already seeing it. It already has started, brother.
Yeah. They arguing in Wisconsin already. They already in Wisconsin arguing about women's rights right now. It's in court. It was in court all day yesterday. Today, that shit is ridiculous.
He taking us back.
The judge literally stated to him, "I can't believe we here." It was a female judge.
And he has immunity to do whatever he wants to do because of the Supreme Court justices that he's appointed. Now he has the Senate. He may have the House. He's going to have full reign, at least for the next 2 years, to do whatever he wants to do. And the Republican Party, they are afraid of him because it's no longer a Republican Party. It's Trump's party. And he's made that very clear with his appointments that he's making. They're being very bold about some very controversial things that they don't even care about it being controversial. They just gonna we about to be in trouble, bro. We about to be in trouble.
And them tariffs coming, like he said too. Them tariffs coming. Hey, niggas they ain't even gonna be able to buy a memory chip for their laptop. China charging $300 for a memory stick.
Hey, I believe that, and I take everything what everybody say as far as their concerns politically. I take it all in, and I listen to it, and I listen to people's concerns. I just don't feel like those concerns are. I think people are more afraid than what actually they're going to need to be afraid about. But you know what I mean? That, like you say, that's an argument that can go on for another 2 years. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I don't think there's anything to fear.
I don't. Yeah.
There are some things to be very concerned about.
Things are going to change. Some things are going to change, but I believe some things need to change. You know what I mean? I think overall, when it came to this whole race, I wasn't a great fan of hers, but I do believe that, they ran on the wrong topics. They ran on the wrong thing. You know what I mean? Because we could just see what the voter output. But, I believe that the Democratic Party did take for granted a lot of things that it came back to bite them in the butt. Overall, I think a better candidate could have been out there. But neither here nor there. You know what I mean? Now it's all said and done. The guy is the president. And I think just from my perspective that some things are going to be, the kids said, see, I get the Sante love you, but you're going to, hey, I think, all right. Well, we'll see. All we gotta do is keep breathing, and we'll find out. Some people gonna feel it. Maybe some people won't. You know what I mean? So we will just see. But I think a lot of times we are. There's a lot of fear mongering when it comes to the
Hey,
agenda
look,
of what you know. So we'll just see. We'll just have to see.
I hear the fear mongering part, but I tell you what, stop and frisk real. I done had to
That's
deal
real.
with it before
That's
several
real.
times, bro.
But
And you can't say you can't
I'm
tell
not
me
condone. I'm not
that one
condoning stop.
thing.
I'm not condoning stop and
And the
frisk.
police will have immunity.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You know,
I'm
but
not
police
condoning
just that
stop and
one
frisk. I'm
thing
not.
is enough
Yeah.
right there. Do you know how many people gonna die behind that? Because, like I said earlier, or was it yesterday? When sometimes kids, you see it so much. Sometimes these kids don't see it so much, they can't even take being stopped by the police. They panic. I done seen it happen before. They
right,
said, "Well, why you was running? Why you was running?" He's like, "I don't know. I was just scared." You know what I
right,
mean? So, but you can't be scared. It's not even that day and time no more. You
right.
can't be scared. You can't do that. You're gonna get shot just for running. And we done seen that
But
happen
I
more than
mean,
any.
why would you run when the police stop you for anyway?
Well,
Fear.
I just said.
No, no, that's ignorant. I mean, we gotta teach our kids, and we
You
know
can't.
better than
No,
that.
no, 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 no.
But yeah, 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 yeah,
That's
Hold
yeah.
on.
You
Hold on.
gotta teach your
Can I-
kids. Hold on, you
Hold
gotta
on.
teach.
Let me say something, please. So I am a grandmother of two black boys, right? And they're both special needs children. Okay. They make sudden hand movements. They're going to be tall. They're going to be socially awkward. To have this whole thing where you shouldn't run, you shouldn't do this, and you're at fault because trained police officers are supposed to be surveilling and protecting the community. They're supposed to actually be protecting my grandchildren. But because of people like you who think that it's okay
No,
for
don't say that because
no,
you make it
wait a
sound.
minute. You talk about, well, why did they run? And
No,
that
no,
fear,
no. We all. I got two. Hold
why
on.
did they
You
run?
got two grandsons. I got two sons
You
that
talk
stay
about
here.
fear
So I
ignorant.
have to teach them how to.
But
And
you,
it's just a
okay,
fact of
you talk
life.
about
It's
fear
just a
ignorant.
fact of life.
No. When
It's
you
just
call
a
fear
fact. It,
ignorant
what? I'm
and
sorry. What you say?
running, when you there's a fight and there's a flight response. Okay? Some people are afraid of the fucking police and they have every right to be.
I'm.
Okay? Because
I
there
feel
are a
that.
lot
I
of
feel that.
cowards with badges. There are a
I
lot of
feel that.
racists with
I
badges.
feel that.
There are a lot of untrained people who don't know how to deal with people with badges.
I feel that.
So that gives people a reason to have the response to run. So to say fear is ignorant, why would you run?
I didn't say fear was ignorant.
That's
I
but
didn't.
it
You putting words in my mouth. I didn't say that. I said we
but
have to teach, and like we've been having to teach our sons and
some people
daughters
you
how
can
to
but you can teach
approach when a
people.
kid when you getting approached by the police. I'm
Sante,
not saying
but when
that is
fear
right, and I'm
but when
not saying
fear
that is.
kicks in,
I'm just saying there's a fact of
the
life being a
response
black man or a black woman being approached by
no, they don't
a
have to
police officer.
when you're walking and you're innocent, I don't have a responsibility. The cops who take that job have a responsibility to protect me.
We
Right.
They
living in the
are
real, but
hired. They
we
are
living in the
hired.
real world. You get out
Okay,
your,
In
so
the
we
real
living in the
world.
world.
all
This is
right.
the real world. This is
No.
before stop and frisk. It was the same way,
Sante,
sweetheart. The
they are
same way.
hired. They're supposed to work for us, not against us.
But
So
listen,
I
I
shouldn't have
hear
to
that.
work.
I hear what you're saying.
Okay.
But what I'm saying to you is that even without the stop and frisk still or being implemented, when that gets implemented, we still had to teach our sons and our daughters how to approach or when being approached. Stop and frisk haven't been around for a while right now. But what I'm saying is it's still America that we live in. Of course, I feel where you coming from.
Tamir
I'm
right?
not saying that it's ignorant, but I'm saying we got to teach our kids.
Tamir
And it's
right?
unfortunate that we have to
You
teach
wrong.
our kids more than white
So,
kids.
Tamir,
Sante
you
and
wrong.
Camille, this is where I think you all need to meet in the middle. I acknowledge what Sante is saying because we do have a responsibility in teaching our kids. But the other piece of it, Sante, is, you know, when you have a lot of cortisol, which is basically the chemical that's released from stress in your body,
Right.
it does impair your fight flight response.
Thank you.
And not just for the kids who
You're
might get shot,
welcome.
but also for the police
I was
officers.
talking to the
Because
pastor.
what we don't
I'm
there's an
talking to you.
excellent book that I want to recommend to you guys. It's called My Grandmother's Hands by Resma. And this book talks about the stress that impacts us in our instant fight, flight, or response that can be impaired. It's not just kids taking off running, but if I'm a police officer and I'm overworked because I'm doing overtime and I got a lot going on, I'm a human being, I got a marriage that may be having issues, I may have financial issues or whatever the case may be. I'm coming to work stressed out. So when I'm in a situation and I'm already having high cortisol in my body, when something happens and I have to make a split decision, I'm not always going to make the best decision. And if implicit bias is in the back of my mind about what I'm taught to think about young Black people who look like me with this going on in my hair and a black hoodie on, right? Then I'm immediately making a decision that I'm not even thinking this is an upstanding citizen and a pastor. I'm bringing all my implicit bias. I'm bringing all this stress into a moment where I have to make a split second decision, and we saw it in 2020 and subsequent years where people end up dead who should not have been. And so while I agree with you that we do have to teach our children, what we need to teach our children and prepare them for how to interact with the police, the reality is, unfortunately, unlike Sante and Nas, they don't have, those young boys don't have, there are some young boys who don't have a Sante in their lives who can teach them and train them. And the reality is, in our community, unfortunately, a vast majority of these young Black boys don't have the types of father figures and mentors in their lives to provide that type of access. And so I think that's my concern. I agree with you, but just looking at the bigger picture of all that's involved in this, there will unfortunately be more Tamir Rices and more others, particularly when you have
And these people are going to be given immunity.
that has been stirred up by Trump's rhetoric, where police officers who were being held accountable and sent to prison for making bad decisions, now they know that they have immunity, which means now they feel like they are going to be licensed to walk down the street, and commit certain types of acts of violence, and get away with it. And that's my concern, that I think,
I think that Black men are going to pay the worst.
Oh yeah, hands down.
In every situation. Yeah. In every situation, Black men are going to pay the worst.
No, hey, them people they deporting gonna get it a little bit worse than us, and then it's gonna spill down us.
And how we're seeing, we slept. You see, that's why we got to pay attention to international politics. We slept on how Israel has treated those Black and brown Palestinians and Lebanese persons, in just having no value for their lives over there. And they're our strongest ally, and they're influencing American politics and our whole way of life. And it was Dr. King who said, an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. But because we don't think about that, we only think of in terms of what's happening here in America. We're not paying attention to what's happening on a global scale. Look at who Trump has even appointed now to the United Nations. And, Stefanik from New York, who has been very dogmatic and just letting Israel do whatever they want to do with a license. They don't care about those lives that have died over there. And in 5 minutes, it's going to be right in our own backyard.
Hey, look, but he told him
but it has been in our backyard.
He went to Dearborn and told him that he was going to end the war. And then what his mans just say?
He double talked.
His man say, nope, we still supporting Israel. Gotcha. Just said literally. But they went for it. All the people in Dearborn, they got on. I seen it on Metro. I follow it.
When you say Black men, people slept in 2022 when Roper, the high school Roper. Now you got to pay $30-some thousand a year to go to Roper, the private school in Birmingham. Named supposed to be one of the best schools in the nation. Well, in 2022, New Bethel Missionary Baptist Church held a press conference for one of the most egregious acts that took place right in our own backyard, that I shouldn't have been the only one voicing concern. When a high school biology teacher gave a homework assignment for high school biology students to identify monkeys, apes, and lemurs in a homework assignment. And in that photo gallery of monkeys, apes, and lemurs was one human being. And do you know who that one human being was in the center of the photo gallery? President Barack Obama.
I knew you were gonna say
Oh
that.
Now,
yeah, I
this was
remember
a
that. Yeah.
school that was founded in 1946 by a Jewish couple fleeing Nazi Germany who understood propaganda and how you begin to try to equate human beings to lesser beings. Because if you can think that somebody is less than human, then you can treat them like they're less than human. And when I held a press conference in my church and called on the Anti-Defamation League's regional executives to stand next to me, Carolyn Normandin, that white woman, Jewish woman, Zionist woman, who I make no apology for how I feel about her, yelled at me like I was a child and told me that I was overreacting by calling out that egregious activity that took place down there when she's Jewish and she knows the power of propaganda and what it has done to cause the Holocaust for their own people. Why are they sitting back allowing the president of the United States, who's black, basically they're saying, we don't care how high you niggas achieve. At the end of the day, you're still nothing but a nigga. Because if we can get people thinking like that, then they're going to treat you like that. And that's what we have been seeing down through the years on how propaganda has been used against us. And that language has been anti-black hate in Michigan has been higher than anti-Semitism. But
Mm-hmm.
who's talking about anti-black hate,
All right.
right? We ain't anybody talking about anti-black hate. When they sent out that message after the election that black people were going to be, my cousin Shawanda. Now, I heard about college students all over the country, but it really hit home when my cousin Shawanda, Estelle, received a text message that was personalized, talking about she needed to get ready to start picking cotton. This is the kind of stuff that we are dealing with right now because of the rhetoric of Trump that led up to this moment. And we're now about to start seeing it become effective in policies that are going to be much more discriminatory and literally taking us back to a day that we're not going to want to
It's
go back.
happening in real time right now. It's happening in real time.
But it's been happening. It's nothing new.
Well, it's only that they've been feeling like they've been
Yeah,
emboldened.
well, it's turned up now.
We got a situation on our hands, and that's why I think it could be a good moment for black people, because what's only been our saving grace is being able to come together. And at the end of the day, if you're more concerned about who I'm sleeping with, when you sleeping with whoever you want to sleep with, when we all dealing with the same reality of anti-black hate in America, then you really on some other stupid stuff that you can stay right on over there and do whatever you're gonna do. And I want to get together with some people who are going to be trying to come together and collaborate and go back to what used to bring to keep our families together in sharing resources and helping one another and getting back to those things that sustained us during those dark periods.
All right.
And we've lost a lot of that because we have lost, people have gotten accustomed to being hooked to the system.
He said he putting the dope man. He killing the dope man. He said he killing them. He said the death penalty for drug dealers. Death penalties.
Well, I think of course, we're gonna have different opinion on it. I mean, I get and I hear,
Well,
and I try to.
Let's
We
have
gotta
this
wait and see what
conversation
happens.
next year, and see what what's going to be effectuated as a result of Trump and his policies. I'm concerned about them.
And that's all we can really do, and then work it. No matter who's in office, it'll make a difference if Cornel West ended up in there. No matter who ended up there, you still have to do your part.
No doubt.
Still have to do your part. If you end up in a pinch, you still got to get out here and work and do your part. I think policy and policy makers can make it harder or easier for you. Are we going to always deal with racism? Heck yeah, I know it ain't going nowhere.
Right.
Could it get better or worse? I think it might also ultimately get worse. But at the end of the day, I'm a big believer in Christ, the Most High. And I understand what Revelation say, things going to get worse before he returns. So I'm looking at things on a biblical standpoint, whereas a lot of people don't look at things on a biblical standpoint. So, I mean, however it happens, you know what I'm saying, it's going to be in the will, ultimately, of the Most High God himself. And do we have some say so? Yeah, there's always a fork in the road. I believe that you do X, then that's going to happen. You do Y, that's going to happen or can happen faster. But ultimately, I believe if you got power in your body and you got a voice and you can make some things happen, then you make them happen for yourself. I don't care if Trump is in or Kamala's in.
Right.
Sante gonna get it. Long as I got my muscles working, my mind rolling, I'm gonna get it. So I mean, I think that's what and I believe there could be a lot of fear, and I believe it on both sides. It could be fear on both sides. People didn't want her for some reason. People didn't want him for some reason. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. You know what I mean? So I'm always gonna be the odd man out here. But you know me, I stand on mine. That's why I like you, Pastor Keon, because you go ahead and no matter what your belief pattern may be, even like you say, you might have a call here or there, or people go against you. You stand on what you believe in. You always have to believe. I'd rather deal with a person that I know where they're coming from than they hide of who they are or what they are. Be who you are. Say what you are. That way a person know how to deal with you, because we deal with a lot of people
We can
that,
agree on that one.
yeah, we deal with a lot of people that, and we all know this, we deal with a lot of people that hide their hand of not who they really are. They go along with the popular. They go along with the rest of everybody else, but they really don't feel like that. So my thing is be yourself, stand on your own. So I'm just so happen to be one of those guys that
Yes, sir.
stand, you know what I mean, on
Right.
what I believe. So with that being said, we gonna always disagree on that politics tip. But that's why I also have a show called At Random that I come on and I talk about at random things called politics and things like that. For anybody that want to join, they can come on and we talk about things like that, because I think those are even though if somebody voted for whatever, we still living in the same community. We still neighbors. And what I didn't like, I'm gonna be honest, what I really didn't like with the election, I saw black women just go crazy, just really going off on black men, and really black men wasn't the impetus of swaying this whole vote. I mean, it was really, we saw the breakdown of how the vote went per race, per ethnic group, and really majority black men still voted for Kamala or on the Democratic side. But I saw the vitriol in black women like none other. I'm just sitting here looking. I didn't even really do anything on social media. I just kind of looked at seeing what women was posting. I'm like, this looks silly. This looks dumb. And we wasn't even the one that swayed. Black men could have voted 5% more on the Democratic Party. She still would have lost. You know what I'm saying? So, it just kind of came across a lot of displaced anger that I saw with black women. You know what I mean? And it showed us how much more of a divide that we actually are from each other, black men and black women. I saw that even more with this whole vote. So that's an issue too that I didn't like. So yeah, that's some things I'll be talking about coming up too. The divide in
I
black
think
women
it's
and black
trauma,
men.
man. I think we need to practice reflective listening skills and empathy building skills. I think that for a number of reasons, our black sisters, and I see Camille's expression, and for
Because
many,
I
many
literally
years,
waited while y'all were all talking, like literally 2 hours into the show. I didn't say anything. But when I felt like I was talking about something passionately, I was like rudely interrupted and didn't even get my point across. I don't know if y'all noticed that, but I sat patiently and quietly until it was my turn to talk.
Go ahead.
I did that, and I'm over it.
All right, what you're saying, Pastor Keon?
well, I feel that justifiably, our sisters have felt that we have not had their back as black men. We have not stepped up to do what we need to do to be there for our kids. Many black men, I think I try to do the best I can for mine, but just by and large, I think that black men have not um, been as responsible as we could have been for our kids and being there. Obviously not you, Sante, but just in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that we have really abdicated our responsibility in having our sisters' backs. But I also feel that there are a lot of challenges going back to slavery and how blacks have been neutered by white supremacy and a lot of other things that have systemically placed us to be in a lot of the positions that we are as black men. And I think now is a wonderful opportunity for us to heal even relationships between our black men and black women. And so I know that even when I think about my own marriage, there was a period where I felt like I had failed as a man, in not being able to understand all the many ways that I was traumatized and needed to heal to be the man that I should have been in my own view, um, dealing with the stresses of life when I would come home and be with my wife, and and I have some regrets in that way, but at the same time, now at some point we have to be able to forgive ourselves and forgive each other, and start having the conversations where we can't listen to each other. And I know it can be difficult, Camille, sometimes, because black men, sometimes we can feel, you know, like we just want to get our point across, and we can in many ways dominate conversations that I don't think is right. I think we have to start paying a little bit more attention and be a lot more respectful. And I was hoping a long time ago, because you've been extremely quiet. I thought you was just kind of more just being listening mode, tonight in the conversation. I've not seen how you've interacted in other settings like this, but I would have most certainly have appreciated your perspective in a lot of what we've been discussing here in the conversation tonight. And so, if Sante thinks that it's appropriate, I would say please. I most certainly want to hear more about where your mindset is and what you're thinking about some of the things we've been discussing tonight.
I'm good. But thank you. I appreciate it.
But yeah, I mean, when it comes to Nakia, what Kia said, it wasn't that it was a name or in particular. Okay, I'm just more or less saying like in a scope of in general. I mean, I don't want to generalize it like in totality, but what I'm saying in general, it's been a lot out, as far as black women have been kind of blaming blaming black men for how the vote turned out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what happened is I think it kind of drove more of a wedge between us and our communication and understanding with each other. You know what I mean? So I think this election, not only, I try not to let it, me and James might see things different as far as on the political scope. That don't change nothing as far as how I feel about James. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, but I think with most people, I think that vote has kind of broken up families, and we have seen it.
Right.
We have seen it. So, I mean, we already splintered. We shouldn't we already splintered as a people. You know what I mean? It was one more extra thing to help us get splintered, you know what I mean? Because we have a different ideology. But I see, and we talk about this, how different nationalities can disagree on certain things, but, holistic, they kind of stick together. You know what I mean? So I just seen, it was more even of a breakdown between black women and men with this election happening. Because I did see some things like on social media with just, certain people here and there, or people that I don't even know that, so I think that's pretty much what I saw. I just was quiet on it, and I just kind of looked and just saw what was kind of happening. But overall, politically, there's always going to be some discourse there. Always going to be some discourse there. But I think it's an important topic to always tackle, and that's always one of the topics that us as people, we just tend, and I talk about this with James, we tend to just shy away from religion, talking about religion, tough topics, religion, sexuality, and politics. Us as black people like to stay away from that. And I think it's time that we living in day, we have to talk about that, because that's affecting our everyday life. Politics is affecting everyday life. Our sexuality is, you know what I mean? We have to talk about these things, you know what I mean? So, and move forward together.
Who really deal with it though? Black women. We deal with it when it comes to our gay and sons and daughters. We deal with it when it comes to our men being incarcerated. We deal with it when it comes to prices going up and prices going down. Like, we've been head of households for a very, very long time. And we are the people who have to get things together when our sons are being buried. It's usually the black women who have to come into the forefront and deal with all of these matters. The black men can kind of like go behind the scenes and wait for us to get it all together. That's very typical. So when it comes to like seeing black men champion for what they call, oh, we know he's a racist, when we know that people like him have divided our families, it's a little sickening to watch. It is. It's just kind of like it's weird. It's really weird.
I hear that. I hear that, but majority of black men that I think black men have a tendency of following black women. And I think those things need to change. Black men need to step up and be the leader. So when they do have a change of mind or heart or
And you
opinion,
think Trump gonna help you with that?
then say that.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
just not even about Trump. I'm just talking
So that's why
overall.
you voted against a black woman, or
She was to me. I don't think she's
woman.
who she's
Period.
portraying, and it ain't got nothing to do
When
with
you
her.
look at, if you look at who her father is, right, and we talk about the one drop rule. I mean, this is just like not even an argument
But it
that
has nothing to do with her
that
being
should
a
not be
woman.
an
I don't
argument.
think she was the
So,
better. But me personally, I don't think she
but
was the
you,
better candidate.
but
I
people
don't care if
still,
Joe Biden was the
I'm
what's his name.
talking. Okay, go ahead.
I don't care if Joe Biden was the candidate. I just don't think they were. That's my opinion.
I
But
wasn't talking about you, Sante. I was talking in
in
general.
general,
Right, but like when I start talking, when Scoob talks, you let him. When Pastor Keon has been talking, you let him. Every time I open my mouth,
I'll
you
put
go.
myself on mute. I'm gonna put myself on mute on my show.
I mean,
Go ahead.
just run it back. You do it, and you've been doing it.
All right, go ahead,
Okay.
Amy.
So my point is, when it comes to all the things that we feel are going to affect black people, it's really going to be black women who have to deal with it the most. Why? Because we support our men, we support our sons, we support our brothers, but it seems like when it comes to us needing support, you can't rely on y'all.
I don't believe. I feel in the overall aspect, yeah, and I believe women does have a right to be feeling like that because it's been like that. I'm not saying I don't agree with you when it comes to that. I'm not saying that,
So how
but
do we fix it, Camille?
I think that if men want to be the alpha, the dominant of the two, they have to get their.
Right, but is that what men want,
I,
or is that what women want from
that's
men?
that's what I hear men want. Men want to lead. That's what I hear. That men want to be leaders. They want to be head of household. They want women to take a step back. But the reality is, how can we?
But I don't even know if that's what men. That's not what I want. My mother is an alpha woman,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm an alpha male. So
Mm-hmm.
I look for somebody who can complement me, and let's lead together. And let's you know your best version of you is going to help me be my best version of myself. So let's do this. Let's do life together. And I think toxic masculinity has created these roles of what black men should look like. And
Mm-hmm.
I believe that because black women sometimes superimpose those ideals on black men, that's where you get the Trump is, Trump
That
grab him
different.
by the P. He is that, that toxic masculinity, which is rooted in white supremacy, which I feel.
But the white supremacy is what like tore us apart as a people. So when we see somebody like leaning towards or voting for that, it's weird. I can't understand it. Like I just can't make sense of it. Then when I try to like sit and listen to the reasoning, it doesn't count. It just doesn't add up to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all dumbfounded by that shit. So it just, I mean, at this point, I just don't like because if they don't get it by now and what they have seen and what it already shows you, and it has only been a few days,
And,
like
and
you
I'm,
don't get it, you just not gonna get it. I don't, you know
yeah,
what
I
I'm saying?
don't. I'm dumbfounded. But I keep going back to his term, like when he was in office. And to me, from what I saw, and I was actually residing in DC at the time, it was a shit show. It was an absolute shit show from the time he moved into the White House till they had to practically pull him up out of there. It was a shit show. And then things that happened, the protesting, the George Floyd, the whole reaction to COVID, all of that was a absolute shit show. So for people, and mind you, when they started talking about stop and frisk and having white boys walk up and down the street with their rifles and flags, it's like that was all because they had this man in that position that they felt at liberty to do that.
Hmm.
I would never want what he came into office and presented to us. I would never want us to go through that again. So to hear any person of color say, yeah, this makes sense to me, and all they can talk about is, well, the Biden administration, it doesn't make sense to me. Because he was horrible up in that office the entire time. It's
All right.
disappointing.
Well, I don't disagree with you, so I don't know. I don't have.
It's very disappointing. And I don't agree with a whole lot, when it comes to certain things. I'm a little, rigid at times when it comes to certain things, but I love everybody. And I think that, what I think that people had a problem with is that at a certain point, America was becoming the melting pot. We were called that. And a lot of people were proud about that. Everybody but the white man, especially when we say, oh, we're a melting pot, and people can marry who they wanted to marry, and interracial dating became like out in the open. It just became, I think they're trying to take us back to where we're going to be niggas in the field. But you know who I think is going to suffer the least? Funny thing is, I think it's going to be black women. I think black women through the 80s and 90s and onward, we've educated ourselves. We hold high positions. We own our homes. We're doing very well in life. And unfortunately, I think a lot of black men, honestly, in dealing with them, resent us because of that. But I think that we have been homemakers, bread bakers, and bread money makers. We're going to be okay.
She rapping.
And
I
guess,
think
but guess who's going to depend on us? The black men. When shit get hard, they're going to depend on us. And
yeah.
that's why it's disgusting.
I
My
think
black
it's gonna be better for y'all because of the fact that y'all is less intimidating than a black man. You know what I'm saying? It's always, and I've
But
said it
when
before.
things get hard for our brothers, it's us.
Yeah, and you better be there. Yeah, no doubt.
Better be there. You
That's
better
what
hope that
some
we're there.
people, but I
John
know
Boy.
that when you speaking on a lot of,
Mm-hmm.
like, it ain't nobody like in here. We always take care of what, my house has always been taken care of, but in general, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I get it, and I
Black
understand
women are not going to
it.
suffer through this at all.
But
Yeah.
let me ask you a question, because a lot of what you're saying is absolutely true, but it's not black men's fault in all the way.
Mm-hmm.
We were conditioned to be in this position. When you think about the Willie Lynch letter, they talked about how to break a human being and make them a slave. Actually, you can Google it. Um, Willie Lynch letter, how to make a slave. Well, they compare human beings with horses. That you take the male horse and you only use the male for reproduction, right? Because you need to inseminate the female horse and get her pregnant. But once you do that, you don't need the male horse no more. You take the female horse and you let the female horse eat out of your hand and feel safe. And then she She looks for that male horse, but when the master replaces it and make you eat out of his hand, then she gonna teach her child how to eat out of his hand,
Mm-hmm.
right? The baby horse,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then it becomes, you that a wild horse, right? They say that a wild horse is not good, in the field. They're only good when you can make them productive. That's what DeSantis was saying in Florida when he said that black people were much more productive when we were slaves, right? That's where that whole terminology comes from. And that was a dog whistle to taking us back to that day that a lot of black people failed to pay attention to. And we support these Republicans and people like DeSantis.
We
And
didn't feel. I don't think that a
a
lot of
lot,
us
a
fail
lot
to
of
pay
people have,
attention to it. We just don't believe that that's going to be our reality again,
and it's unfortunate we think that way.
and that's very unfortunate.
It's a very unfortunate. And so I think that now is just going to be a time where we're going to have to, recognize how we have been placed in this pattern of perpetual this cycle of emasculating the black man, and whether it's the prison system, which was the day. But here's the story, Emil. The fastest growing rate of incarceration is no longer the black man;
Mhm.
it's black women. Black women right now is the fastest incarceration rate. And what is that all about? Because while to your point, Scoob, I do feel that black females are a lot less intimidating than black men. I think even that is changing because of the way that you guys have asserted yourselves to the place where a black woman can be running to be president of the United States. It's like it has sent shockwaves, into this culture of white supremacy where they're looking like, hold up, wait a minute, how did we even get to this place?
Yeah, they get scared.
Yeah. Do you know how like intimidating I am? Like in my workplace, like even coming back home to work in Pontiac, like my hometown, I've already been labeled the angry black woman.
And
You
it,
know
you,
what I'm saying?
it was an angry black woman, it was an angry black man.
Yeah. So I totally agree with what you're saying, and I do
When we
feel
get
like,
angry, they
yeah,
want to put us down.
right. So even in dealing with that, like just trying to talk to like brothers about it, there's no support. There's no. I get the it must be nice, because I make a certain amount of money. When you have a disagreement, you can't even respectfully disagree. It's just
Well,
it's
we
just
got a lot of work to do, and I
it's
and
a
I
lot of work to be done,
yeah,
especially when it comes to the black man and female relationship. But
Man, I'm
black
gonna
women
make some
just don't
money.
feel supported by black men at all. So we
and we
just
need to
we
talk
just
Some
about
take
that.
care of
money.
ourselves.
I think the church can play a role too, because you've had pastors who have not supported who have not supported our women, in growing and because they were feeling threatened and insecure, and so we got a lot of work to do. But I don't think that it's all lost. I think it's just chaos presents opportunity, and it's all about how you look at it. And if we're really serious about addressing the root causes to why we have so much dysfunction in our community, instead of griping and bitching and complaining about it, let's come together and roll up our sleeves and do
But
the hard work to
that's
heal.
the thing about it. Like we talk about it all the time. We always bring up Willie Lynch and the systematic approach that they took in separating our families. Like we know all of this, but yet and still, 2024, we still fighting and we're fighting against each other. Like there's never like a united front. And I do think that we can say like shame on the churches for not stepping into these situations and being a voice. I mean, you have all these parishioners and churchgoers coming in and paying their tithes and doing their offerings and all this kind of stuff. And there's like, from what I can see, poor leadership.
Yeah. Oh, let me go. Oh, she say that's perfect. That because yes, that's simply that. And guess what? It would have been that easy, even if it just happened 40 years ago. If the pastors 40 years ago would have had a sermon and said, "We need to make family family,"
Mhm.
instead of manipulative sermons. If you start facing them issues back then, we would have been out of that. It only take the black people It only take us between 25 and 30 years to figure some shit out. It's a long time, but I'm just saying that ain't a joke. That's a real number. If you want to come out of from uh slavery to shit, how many years was people still on it? You know, they found people that were still in slavery 10 years after slavery.
Mhm. Yeah, some
You
people
had
do
some
that.
that didn't leave. Do you know how many people that didn't leave slavery?
Yeah.
They said they didn't want to.
Hmm. And told on others.
That's what I'm saying.
And to me, that just
I,
sounds like
I
the
tell
nigga
people
that
not to
says,
be
"Well, you
ignorant,
shouldn't have ran." That's how
people
it
not to
feels
be
to me.
ignorant, and people rather not do anything because people don't want to take personal responsibility. And at the end of the day, that's exact. I think I said it about an hour ago, and I reiterate. That's why people don't want to deal with truth. The truth will set you free, but freedom is taking responsibility. And a lot of people don't want to take that responsibility. And when you start moving down that path, people for whatever reason will go to the left. So now, I think we're just at a point where we're going to be forced to come back right.
I think ultimately, us as black people, we looking and searching and wanting a leader maybe or some type of unity. But I'm just going to take it from my belief point, which is biblical. The leader is Christ. Okay, and the more that we stray away from it as a people, the more quagmire we gonna be in, the more stress is biblical. It's there, and we see it, and we all can believe how we want. But I believe as a people, it tells us what's going to happen and why it happens to us. Why
But
the
see, the
confusion?
difficulty with saying, and I'm a pastor, right? So I
Okay.
can say this. The challenge with saying with wanting to keep everything biblical is you'll always have somebody coming back saying what the Bible says that the man should be the leader. The Bible will always come back and say the woman should be quiet at home. And then the same way that people will use that to ostracize other communities when it's convenient for them, that has been done historically to women down through the years. But you're right though,
Mhm.
that's why I say it's not biblical. It's Christ-like. Being Christ-like sometimes is not going to be biblical. Jesus proved it. But when you look at what Jesus did when it came to women, he empowered women. He gave women opportunity, right? And there have been pastors in the past who have always elevated black women. Man, bro, when I became pastor of New Bethel, women couldn't wear pants in a sanctuary, let alone be preachers. And I not only are women, did I change that whole paradigm, but I licensed and ordained women into ministry. And then later it became some of those same women who came back with knives from my back. And it's like, you try to do it's difficult because I think that, there's just a lot of, I go back to ignorance. My people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. And I agree with you, Nakia. It's going to take that one leader. Hell, I'm trying to be it, but I ain't just started. I've been trying to be it. And if anybody's ever been paying attention, there have been things that New Bethel has done down in the past almost 20 years where we have been trying to make inroads into having certain kinds of conversations. And it has literally driven people from the pew, let alone the pastors who don't want to talk about it. But the people in the pew have been conditioned to believe and think in a certain kind of a way. And that's why we still stuck in this rut. And so now it's like, okay, well, how do we, if you have a leader who gonna take you to the right way, but think about King, right? They didn't follow King back in the day. They put King out the convention. The pastors did.
Hmm.
That's how you got the Progressive National Baptist Convention started, right? Because it took a king who was also very progressive in allowing women to be included, et cetera, the whole 9 yards. But it's difficult work. But for people who really want to do the work, there's opportunity to rebuild the walls. But we need people to want to come and roll up their sleeves because it's not going to be a cakewalk. And I think we have also been conditioned to want everything to be a microwave, make it happen tomorrow. And some things are just going to take time. And we have to be able to make sure that we're on the right path and having the kinds of conversations that will illumine and elicit the types of discussions that we need to have so we can start unpacking why has our behavior been so dysfunctional all this time.
Yeah.
and let's unpack that and unlearn some of that
Yeah,
behavior.
But even as we've been
it
talking
has to
about
be
that for
love
years,
too.
even as we've been talking about this and that for years, you know what I mean? And it sounds great and good. It just hasn't happened. And it just, I'm not being half empty on the glass looking at it, but it hasn't gotten any closer to happen.
Yeah, but do you realize where the discord came from? It's specifically because of your statement, which you said it has to be Christ, but you always forget that there is Buddhism, Judaism, all these other religions of great people that don't
Well,
know
you know where
nothing
I stand
about
with that, and
Christ.
I and I and I
I
get
know,
that, and I
but I'm
get
just
that,
think
and I
saying, but
get
Christ
I'm,
that,
is
I
I'm
get
not
love.
that.
speaking just to you. That's what
Right,
I'm
you
saying.
talking in general
Yeah,
Yeah,
overall.
so
I
so
get you.
when I
I
talk
get you.
about
I get you.
Christ, I ain't talking about Christianity. It
Thank
it
right.
was
you.
it was Mahatma Gandhi who said, I love Jesus. It's his followers who I got a problem with. So every religion has, all of them have noted that Jesus is the way. They just don't ascribe to Christianity. And so, I'm with you, Scoob. But I'm with also Scientific. There is a Christ. There is every knee gonna bow and tongue confess, because the way of Christ, which is love your neighbor as yourself, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, strength, and your neighbor as yourself. Treat people how you want to be treated. That didn't just start with Jesus. David was doing that when Saul could have killed David, and he spared his life. And then when Saul was dead and gone, David was like, "Is there anybody I can still bless in Saul's household?" And he had a grandson named Mephibosheth who was lame in his feet and couldn't even walk. And back in the day, if people who were considered to be lame were also considered to be demon possessed, and also considered to be people who needed to be marginalized. He was living in a place called Lodebar, right? Literally, someone who David, as the king, should not have even been associating with, but because he had the heart of Christ, even though he was messed up and had his own issues, there were often times when he demonstrated what Christ would have done. And because he had a heart, the Bible says David was a man after God's own heart, even with his flaws and his issues. Because when you look at inherently outside of that David Bathsheba situation, how he treated people, he did it in the spirit of Christ. And it wasn't just David, it's other examples way before
A
Jesus.
mass murderer.
Well, that's why he had to come to reckon with his own flaws, as we all will do and have to do.
And Solomon, I'm a
Get
King
back on the
Solomon expert. I'm a King Solomon expert.
path.
I'm definitely a King Solomon
Well,
expert.
at least Solomon appreciated a good black sister when he had her.
He sure did. He
Mm.
sure did. He stepped on that board and made her better too, but y'all don't know about all of that anyway.
Hey, I know about it, good brother. We gonna have to talk more. I like you, Scoop.
Hey, look, man, but I ought to get something to eat. I'm tired of all you niggas for
I
real.
done
We
told
on this call 3 hours. I can
It's
literally
like,
talk
But
all night, but I do think it's good time. I'm always my schedule is crazy, but like tonight we scheduled this. I put it on the calendar. We made it happen. So in the future, I'm not the kind of, you can call me the night before usually, but I can plan something out. If we want to plan some other conversations, let's do it. I do want to put in a plug for a program that I think will help to address some of this for Black men specifically. Starting on this coming Thursday, ITEJ, the Institute for Trauma and Economic Justice that we developed as a national nonprofit, we have a partnership with the University of Michigan School of Medicine to do a mental health intervention for Black men, to talk about our stressors and the ways that our stressors impair our behaviors sometimes, our cognition, and what we can do to start healing as Black men and dealing with some of the toxic masculinity that often is very stressful, where men are assumed to be in certain types of roles. We're supposed to detach from our emotions. All those things that have been imposed upon what an expectation of what a man's supposed to be, that often causes men to have mental health issues and challenges. For 10 weeks, not consecutive because of the holidays, but starting on this coming Thursday, it's going to be free. We got maybe room for about 3 or 4 brothers. We already got a good core group, but we got about 3 or 4 brothers who can still sign up and come. If you want to come on this coming Thursday, shoot Sante a message or contact the church or shoot me an email at info at itej.org, and we can get you plugged in. We want to fill in those last slots, and then next year after this 10-week cohort, we're gonna do it again. And then, Camille, I want you to be a part of the female version, which is called Mom Power. It's not
Oh,
just for mothers, but it's for mothers who are, or women who are also mother figures. So maybe you're raising your grandkids or your nieces and your nephews, etc. We're gonna do it for the women, and then we're gonna bring everybody together and start having the types of conversations that will be guided and will be unpacked in a series of weeks. So it's starting on this coming Thursday. It's gonna be off the chain. And want to invite all the brothers who have a serious interest in wanting to heal themselves and disrupt intergenerational transmission of trauma to their own kids. Let's make it happen. Come to Fraternity of Fathers this Thursday, 6
Cool.
o'clock, New Bethel.
That's what's up. That's what's up.
We actually, Pastor Keon, thanks for thanks for coming on. I know we conversated, like I say, almost a month ago, a little bit about this. So I'm glad you finally got the time to be able to come on. I appreciate you for that. You know, being able to have a candid conversation, and as you see, it can kind of get like how you see how it can get, right? So, but that's why it's here. But this is really almost, I'm kind of like calling this the season finale because we almost got almost 20 shows at this point.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's kind of been, I guess that's around a good round number for end of season 1, but season 2, gonna be adding a couple of more different formats for people that's watching. Maybe having actually some more people come because I like to have it as a panel discussion or whatnot. But it's been fun, you know. So I'm glad you came on. I appreciate everybody that has came on so far. We have had some interesting people from Gil Garrett to Melanie to you to Norbert. You know, we got a lot of plethora of information and a lot of good stuff coming from the community. And I just want to help it, you know, to continue. And I'm glad, you know, Camille, Amy. You know, we disagree, you know what I'm saying? You roll your eyes, stump your feet, but it's all good. You know, it's all good. I'm glad you're here because I don't mind the resistance, and she know I might give her a tough time too. It's all good. I don't really take it too hard, so I hope she don't either. I
Oh, I
mean,
wouldn't be here if I took it personally.
you know,
So
so
just make that clear.
all right. But you know, so we gonna continue going into next season. We gonna continue to rub each other the wrong way. Just let you know that.
Yeah.
But
I think, let me say that. I think no, but seriously, I think if we all agreed, it
it'll
would
be
be
stu.
a
It'll be
show.
yeah. It would be.
You
Oh,
know what I'm
It
saying?
really
If we
would be.
all agreed, we would be parroting each other, and there would be no point. You might as
It
well
would
just
be
be
no
out here
point.
by yourself,
It
right?
would be no point.
So you know, it's all good.
But with that being said, you guys, thanks, Pastor Keon again, and we
No,
call
I
it
want
good.
to say something.
Go ahead, go ahead. I mean, I'm gonna hit my mute button. I ain't gonna say nothing.
How y'all doing out there? Keon, you mentioned Tylertown, Mississippi.
Yeah,
And through that, I found out that I believe we're related,
I'm
right?
I'm sure I'm
Yeah,
about
we're
related to everybody.
related. We're related. I actually think I had a mutual cousin say that we related.
Is
And
that
then
right?
yeah, and I'm also good friends with Angie, who I know is your family. So we're family, sweetheart.
All right, all right.
Thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I didn't disagree with much you had to say. Um, Scoop,
oh,
Scoop.
you passing it? Oh, my bad. I didn't know. I thought you was going to say something about
No,
me.
no, no, no. I was going to say something to you. I appreciate your humor, your being frank, and I just adore you. I think you're funny, right? Asante, I appreciate your wisdom. Although we don't agree on everything, clearly, I appreciate the invitation to be on the show and giving me an opportunity to bring people on and have these discussions. Like, I love y'all, you know, and it's all good. It's all good. I, yeah.
Y'all want a
All right.
hug or something? What the hell?
No,
Oh,
because
we all right.
I don't
No,
want it to I don't ever want it to be where it looks like we're against each other. Shut up.
But that's part of the.
Yeah,
That's part of
I don't
the.
want to
That's
even give those optics because you know I do respect you know everything that everybody has to say. And again, if we all agreed with each other, you know,
it
what
would
would
be
be the point
lame.
of even doing this? So
Right.
I think we're well balanced. And Asante, even though you might feel like you're the odd man out, I'm a female here, you know, and so sometimes I have to speak on our behalf. You know,
Your homie.
I'm a Muslim here, right? And sometimes I have to just sit there and let somebody who say, go to Christ. You know, I leave that alone and I respect it, you know,
Take it.
for real. But I also be feeling like when people say certain things, I just want to say, you know, although I am a Muslim woman, I'm also a good Christian.
Amen.
And I hope that that sits well with y'all. Okay.
Amen.
Well, I'm
Yep.
And I
starting
ain't going to let
to
nobody out Christ me.
That's right.
So I aim and strive all the time to just be, like you said, Pastor Keon, a good person.
Yeah.
And to me, that works.
Here, here.
All right. With that being said, keep God first, family second, and you third. In that order, you should never be made last because the last is always made first. I'll get with you guys in the upcoming week.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thanks,
Peace.
all. Take care.